do this. Let me see. Janae, am I leaving computer audio?
City Attorney Joden.
Here.
City Manager Harlow Shulk.
Here.
Commissioner Halliday.
Here.
Commissioner Dean.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our regular city commission meetings for March 8th and March 22nd were received. Do you have any comments, suggestions? If not, the minutes will stand as submitted. Consent agenda. B, ROI to approve the work plan and budget of the Business Improvement District and to levy an assessment of all properties within the district for the fiscal year 2022 and to set a public hearing date for June 28th, 2021. ROI to approve work plan and budget for the Tourism Business Improvement District and to levy an assessment upon all properties within the district for the fiscal year 2022. A resolution of intention to specify the assessment option for the Streets Maintenance and Improvement District number 1 for fiscal year 2022 and levy and assess all properties within the district. A resolution of intention to specify the assessment option for the Open Space Maintenance District 1 for fiscal year 2022 and levy and assess all properties within the district. F, a resolution of intention to specify the assessment option for this Special Street Lighting District for fiscal year 2022 and levy and assess all properties within the district. G, a resolution of intention to specify the assessment option for the Stormwater Utility Service area for fiscal year 2022 and levy and assess all properties within the service. H, a resolution of intention to specify the assessment options for the collection and disposal of residential garbage and refuse to fiscal year 2022 and levy and assess all properties receiving residential solid waste collection. Dang. I, a resolution of intention to specify the assessment option for the Special Urban Forest Management District for fiscal year 2022 and levy and assess all properties within the district. J, a resolution intention to specify an assessment option for the Landfill Monitoring and Maintenance District for fiscal year 2022. Oh, excuse me. And levy and assess all properties within the district. K, a resolution of intentions to set rates for all customers of the City of Helena water system for fiscal year 2022. L, a resolution of intentions to set residential and commercial wastewater base and usage rate for fiscal year 2022. M, a resolution granting 1-year extension of resolution number 20606, the vacation of 6th Avenue between North Roberts and Sanders. N, a resolution of intention to levy and assess properties to recover the cost of removal of snow and ice from sidewalks on the adjacent public rights of way. O, a resolution levying an assessment on properties to recover the costs of reimbursement for water and wastewater infrastructure installed by the city for tax year 2021. P, a resolution of intentions to levy and assess properties to recover and amortize loan issue under the Residential Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Loan Program for tax year 2021. Q, a resolution of intention to levy assessment for improvements of sidewalk, curb, gutters, and alley approaches in the city of Helena, Montana for tax year 2021. Do we have any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions on item D, the street maintenance.
Item D. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I guess before asking the question, just by way of background, historically, when we've done rate setting for the year, and maybe this is for Commissioners Dean and Logan too, just because I don't think you guys have been through a rate setting process, because last year they were, we did a 2-year rate setting process the year before, so there were no rates to be set last year. Historically, we've gone through the budget by not putting the rates, or at least staff has not put rates into the base budget. Essentially budgeting conservatively to see that we live within our means. If a rate is then determined to be necessary, or an increase in the rates are determined to be necessary, we've had a discussion about that, posted it, and then adopted them by the 2nd or 3rd week in August, whatever statutorily required. So we've usually not done it this early, and it doesn't really matter to me when we do it, best practices, if we do it before August, whatnot. But one of the reasons for doing them after the adoption of the budget historically has been in case we, as a commission, decided we had any other priorities or other items to add into the budget, to make sure that then department directors or the finance director or the manager could go back and determine whether any of those additional items were necessary or called for a rate increase. So just understand that when I'm asking that, that's my background understanding of our prior history of rate increases. So for D, with the street maintenance improvements, it seems like if we adopt the current budget as stated, our excess reserves only come to about $500,000 after we spend down our sort of all of the excess cash that we've had. And we've had a number of discussions about items that weren't in the budget, like the voluntary sidewalk program, which we'd previously put at about $150,000, safe routes to schools, which is previously in there at $200,000, and then slip and falls, which had been in there at $225,000, I believe, previously. And so those numbers together, let's just say there was commission consensus, would be about $475,000, which would put our remaining cash balance, if we adopted all of those, to somewhere in the range of like $30,000 remaining in the street maintenance fund. That's excess. We'd continue to have the other reserves set by the manager. If there were any other items that the commission wanted, for example, we've discussed Knight Street, we've brought up preliminary engineering possibilities for Centennial Trail or crossings on Euclid. I'm just trying to get a sense of either Director Danielson or the manager's thoughts on those if we were to say adopt $750,000 and eclipse that remaining reserve. Is that okay without a rate increase? Would that then call for a rate increase? I'm just trying to suss that out, because it looks like we're getting right down to that 0 level if there is commission consensus even on those initial 3 items.
Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioner. As part of the presentation tonight, I'll be sharing to you the discretionary dollars left as by way of balance after we have completed that summary review of the dollars brought before you. And what I wanted to make sure and share to you is that, yes, we anticipate having sufficient funds without having to complete that increase that you're describing. Now, again, the rates are based on the budget is submitted by the manager. So if you in fact decided to revise and go beyond and decide as a commission that you would like to increase the amount of funds that are available to the city by way of the streets assessment, that would be up to your prerogative. I will share to you, you had shared the ending balance being close to 500,000, and right now, based on what I'm seeing, it's around $289,902. So I can ask Commissioner Danielson to, or excuse me, Director Danielson to further clarify if she'd like anything beyond what I have shared.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. And maybe just in that process as well, my understanding historically, if the commission were to choose to adjust rates, when we notice rates as are proposed in our packet this evening, we're not allowed to adjust upwards, was my understanding, once we adopt the initial resolutions of intent to set rates. And so if we adopt zeros tonight, we've always been told in the past that we cannot go, say, up to 2% if that was necessitated. So I'm just curious if you have thoughts on that.
Director Danielson?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Halliday. I believe that is correct, that if you do move forward with the resolution of intention, you may not increase rates at this point. And the rates at this point for all of these assessments are set with the manager's proposal at this time. So should the commission decide to add appropriations to any particular fund that may or may not deplete the cash balances, you may at that point pull back the ROI for the particular assessment, table it until further discussion on the budget and the appropriations have been settled, and then we can come back with a revised ROI for the assessments. And you are correct as well that typically these assessments have not come forward to the commission until after the preliminary budget adoption. We were moving forward with no rate increases based on the conversations that we've had with trying to understand our assessments, the methodology for assessments. And so at that point, we decided to move forward a little bit earlier with these ROIs, but they can certainly be postponed after further discussions.
Well, and I'm just trying to explore what the best way to do it is, right? If we waited until, say, July 7th, right, to do the ROIs, we'd have at least that budget passed on June 28th. Everything goes through exactly as it is today, then we do the ROIs at zero and life moves on. If we go crazy and increase the open space maintenance budget by $2 million, and you're like, geez, guys, you need to increase this rate, then we have the opportunity to do that without doing any other mechanical tricks. It just seems that if we do it tonight at zero, we're going to run into a problem during the subsequent amendment process, right? Even if there are 3 commissioners who want to do certain projects, say in a fund a new trail, fund a new parking lot for open space. If we say zero tonight, then the answer is going to be we can't do it without either pulling back the ROI or we're going to get stymied if we do the final product. And since they seem to be syncing up on the 28th, that could kind of be a problem. So I'm just curious your thoughts on would there be a detriment to delaying all of these ROIs until post 28th budget adoption, or street maintenance. I mean, that's the only one I'm seeing that we still have some room for discussion in, where we look like we might be pretty close to the cash balance. And so I don't necessarily have a opinion about stormwater or water at this point. If that's the recommendation, we don't see any debt on the horizon, but street maintenance, because it seems so close, and maybe there won't be any other amendments adopted. Maybe we'll have 15, and that just seems to make hopefully your life a little bit easier than to force you to do 2 or 3 tricks.
Thank you, Commissioner Halliday. No, there would be no detriment to postponing these ROIs.
If I may, Mayor.
Go ahead,
I see.
Madam
Sorry, I see
Manager.
Commissioner O'Loughlin had her hand raised.
Oh, my apology, Commissioner.
Oh, it's okay, Mayor. I just maybe had one more follow-up question for Commissioner, or I did the same thing, Director Danielson. So as we're talking about streets and sort of where we sit with that fund, are there any other funds in your mind that also sort of were kind of close, that if we were to say we'd like to look at other future projects within the next fiscal year budget, we would have to discuss rates, or is streets perhaps the only one?
If I may, Mayor.
Go ahead, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. when we went through the adoption process of the Book of Fees, I shared there were many and most of our fees had questionable methods and assessment method itself. The mathematics were interesting. To identify a particular outcome with the dollars was something we were intentionally not trying to get after, just because there are so many of these assessments that actually need a good vetting and evaluation as to their methodology, including the streets fund. And we brought it up as part of the conversation around the airport as well. So my concern to all of you would be that in the long run, the city could in fact spend more time providing better analysis if the commission were to choose to expand the spending and increase fees. That would result in a cascading effect on the evaluation of those assessments, which have not been put together yet. So that could extend the ROIs even further than the 28th, because I would hate to bring to you an assessment just to hit the dollar amount, knowing that the math is questionable in its method. Thank you. And
Thank you, Manager Hollishaw.
Maybe a follow-up on that from Ms. Danielson. Are we talking about adjusting any of the assessment methodologies for fiscal 22?
All of the assessments at this time are under evaluation.
I guess what I mean is if we adjusted the rate, right, as the assessment exists today, the new assessment isn't going to be, the new methodology can't be adopted until the next time rates are actually set and changed, correct?
That is correct.
So if we needed to adjust street maintenance up even like 1% this year, that shouldn't change your methodology, your math, right? Because we're just going to increase it by $300,000 or something for the year. You can still work on what the new proper methodology would be if you don't think that the square footage measurement is the right way to do it, right? And I'm all with you. Like, I think a lot of our methodologies are not very good, and I've wanted us to fix street maintenance for a long time. The old finance director said it would be too much work and didn't want to do it. So like, power to you, good luck. I think it's a great idea, but I just want to make sure that we separate the question. If we just need an extra $300,000 in cash to make sure the fund is solvent this year, and then you guys can cut loose and get us the best method by which to assess, we should be able to do that, shouldn't we?
It is a matter of a mathematical equation. Yes, we could incorporate that.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on these resolutions? Claims, consent agenda. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no raised hands, and I've received no written public comment on the consent agenda.
Thank you. So for consent agenda item B, we have a corrected bid resolution, and I'm sure all of you have that in your packet. At this time, I would open, except for B, it states we move to consent agenda item A through Q, including corrected version of item B related to the proposed assessment for the business improvement district. So
I guess maybe just a question, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to know, would people be open to removing item D or tabling item D for now? I'm fine with moving the rest of them if that's what the commission wants, but delaying on item D until we complete the budget process, determine whether anything needs to be done with item D, and then, as Ms. Danielson said, it's not going to impact getting that rate set. If it's still zero in July 10th, then it's still zero. If it's not, then we avoided a problem.
okay. So the floor is open, commissioners. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor, I would be okay with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Dean. Any others?
Question, please,
Please go ahead, Commissioner.
for the manager. Maybe just another opportunity, if there is a downside to this, could you explain that to us? If there is.
Thank you, Commissioner. No, there is no downside to delaying, and with the potential to increase your rate total assessed for next year. No.
Thank you.
So, okay.
So Mayor, I'm
Commissioner?
happy to make a motion to approve items A through C and items E through Q with the amended,
Corrected bid.
the corrected language.
Second?
Madam Clerk, it's been moved and seconded.
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
And then Mayor, I would move to table item D with the direction of bringing it forward after final, or after the public hearing on the budget on June 28th.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Bid award. Lawrence and Warren Inspection Intersection Reconstruction Bid Award. Madam Hollishock? Oh,
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to share to you, we have two projects, items A and B, both as part of the presentations and conversation tonight. Director Konopky is available to provide further detail on these items before you. If you'd like to come forward, Director Konopky, and answer or provide any high-level detail. I know that there was further conversation on item A in email and that I'd want to make sure and share to you all. And that is that when the agenda is put together and items are submitted, I work with the directors to make sure that a recommendation is made. The Lawrence and Warren Intersection Reconstruction Bid Award in particular was one that was offered up as options to the commission and not in particular a recommendation. I sent it back to to Director Konopky for a recommendation. So I would say that it's a soft recommendation among the recommendations that we provide to you so that there's plenty of opportunity to ask questions. And definitely, I know that we have with us on either on the phone or in person. I do not see them in person. Members of the school district who may also be available to provide input on these items. Director Konopky.
you have the floor, Director Konopky.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you. I'll be brief. The existing crossing at Lawrence and Warren is approximately 150 feet in length, which is a daunting crossing effort for even an adult, much less a school child going across to either going to school or back. This project will reconfigure that intersection to reduce that down to about 55 feet and provide better visibility for drivers of those people crossing that intersection. The project was bid on April 6th to redo the curb, gutter, sidewalk, and roadway. Previous to that, city staff received some comments at a public meeting and from a central school parent group. The Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council participated in a walk audit to look at the three intersections. And out of that walk audit came some recommendations of reinstallation of a crosswalk at 9th that was previously taken out due to a collaborative effort between the city and the school district to try to funnel the school kids and any pedestrians down to 8th Avenue, where the school district, when they built Central School, provided pulse outs. They provided crossing and guard there, and that was the preferred route to get the kids down and across. Some of the drawbacks at the 9th crossing that were examined back then were the proximity to the school buses pulling in and out of that area, and also the emergency access point is right there at that crossing. So tonight, we're recommending award of the base bid and of the Lawrence and Warren intersection reconstruction project, City Project 1908, to Helena Sand and Gravel in the amount of $174,344.50, and then any additive alternates. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Director Kanopki. Commission? Go ahead, Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Mayor, Director Konopki, I was just wondering, so in light of the cooperative effort between the school district and the city to remove the crosswalk and try to direct traffic to 8th, has the city gone back to assess, did that work? I'm just curious, you know, what you all have seen there as far as did the removal of the crosswalk result in people crossing elsewhere?
Mayor and commissioners, so as a result of the walkout, it showed that people are still crossing at 9th. And I would, I guess, clarify when I say remove the crosswalk. We removed the pavement markings and then directed the ADA ramps perpendicular to the roadway. You know, I'm not sure if prior to or pre-COVID, we were having some more compliance to, I guess, the intended route. I do know that during COVID, there was some changes in accessing the buildings that I think may have prompted a little bit more use of the crossing there at 9th. Again, I guess I can only say that during the walkout, that it was observed that people are crossing at 9th without the crosswalk. Montana state law does note or states that any intersection is a crosswalk, whether marked or unmarked in the state of Montana. So, you know, people driving should be observing that if that crosswalk is occupied, they should be stopping. I'm going to tell you that that rule is not followed consistently, probably in Helena or across the state, but that is what it is. And I do know that the school district had sent out a memo, or an email response, that they were still wanting to move forward with their 8th crossing and not install this, but I believe that they may be on the line. Their director of maintenance, Callie Kind, or the superintendent may be on the line to answer any questions that you have from a school perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner. And you know, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know that Montana law. So I can imagine how many others don't know it. And so it's scary. Any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I do have a couple questions. So I think for Director Konopki, and I'd be interested to hear the school district's response to, in the information that we were provided, it discusses that the crosswalk was removed because it was not safe, which was why they were wanting to have kids cross at 8th. And then what we're hearing from the public comment is that without the crosswalk there, well, not all the public comment, but many of the parents who've contacted the commission, that they feel like it is not safe without it. And so I'm wondering if maybe you can address whether you think the safety would be improved, considering that is the bus lane and the fire truck lane too. And then what we would do to, mitigate those kind of risks if we did move forward with putting a crosswalk back in. And what would the district do to help mitigate those risks?
Mayor and Commissioners, I cannot say what the school district would do or not do. I can say that, the intent was, again, to funnel them all down to an enhanced crosswalk, which provided bulb outs and a crossing guard, and to try to take them in basically at the main entrance of the school. I did read some of the comments that, they're forced to go into the north playground entrance. I don't know that for sure. And I don't know if that's still the policy of the school. If we installed bulb outs, bulb outs always enhance the pedestrian visibility to vehicles. It puts them out there a little bit farther in a area that the vehicles can readily see them. Putting back in the crosswalk, yes, it would provide more safety than an unmarked crosswalk. But there are some drawbacks. There's some concerns with, again, the interactions with the school buses, because that would be in that area. If bulb outs were installed, the buses would have to, try to swing that turning movement into their bus turn lane. And there's concern that they could be misaligned and then buses sticking out or what have you. That's why there's the little caveat in the presentation that if we did go forward with the bulb outs or the crosswalk or any of the alternatives, that we would want to consider making that section of Ewing one-way southbound. That kind of accomplishes two goals. It provides a little bit more room for the buses to maneuver. It also provides more room in the wintertime for people dropping off or picking up at the school. Because right now we have a pretty traditional Helena roadway that has parking on one side and school pickup on the other. You get two vehicles opposing each other, and it gets narrow. And then in the wintertime, you introduce any snow berms or whatever. The other point that would help would be most passengers exit a vehicle from the passenger side. So if you had a one-way southbound, the passenger doors are opening towards the school, which would provide, which would eliminate school age or anybody from getting out on the passenger side and crossing traffic. This would put them basically right at the curb.
Thank you, Director Kanopke.
I'd also be interested if the school district has any answers to some of those questions too.
Well, we'll get to them, but we're with the commissioners right now, so. Commissioner Logan?
Mr. Mayor, thank you, either for the manager or Director Kanopke, that with the acceptance of the bid award, and it's kind of a basic question, sorry, but the acceptance of the bid award tonight, would that prevent us from moving forward with any of the steps that you've talked about or that possibly we've heard from the public to take those steps in the future? Are they mutually exclusive?
If I may. No, they are not. They're just the alternatives are really what we're talking about, and making sure we get the direction is just the secondary piece. So no, it does not affect the actual bid award.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, question for Mr. Kanopke. So there's a bulb out at 8th Avenue running from the north side of 8th Avenue to the south side of 8th Avenue, adjacent to Central, right?
I believe so, yes, Commissioner.
And how far from the existing bus lane where the buses can pull in, that bay that was built onto the property, how far from the bay is that bulb out?
Mayor and Commissioners, I'd have to get back with you though with that measurement. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Has the school district complained to us that that bulb out on 8th Avenue on that southern end of their bus bay inhibits their buses from exiting or entering into the bus bay? Because that was part of the collaborative process, I think, in designing this.
Mayor and Commissioners, I have not heard anything from the school district in reference to your specific scenario.
Did you get a chance to see the video that we were sent this morning by a central parent?
Mayor and Commissioners, no, I did not receive that video.
I was just going to ask you your thoughts because it's almost like the Helena Fire Department wanted to provide us with some level of visual understanding, because for the first portion of the video, our truck, not just, a small response vehicle, but the fire truck is parked directly across the emergency lane. So it's directly in the way. Kids are going around the truck on both sides, so they're in the street longer in trying to get there. 2 school buses go by that fire truck during at least a portion of the video. I didn't count if there were more trips by them. So I guess I was curious, is the proposed bulb out that would be on 9th, either on the southern corner or the northern portion, is that anticipated to be wider than a city fire truck, just because the fire department decided to give us a demonstrable today?
Mayor and Commissioners, the size of the bulb are typically the width of the parking lane. So in that area, I would say it'd be anywhere between 6 and 8 feet wide, or encroaching into the roadway, I guess. Would be
So either as wide or probably narrower than a regulation fire truck. And I apologize if you don't know the width.
correct.
So at least we saw, doesn't prove anything, right? But we saw school buses happily navigating that with a fire truck parked alongside the driving lane there today. So we had at least a minimal demonstrable of what a bulb out would look like for a bus passing by.
Mayor
If
and
not
Commissioners,
more.
without seeing the video, I can't completely answer the question, but from what you explained, it sounds correct.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Madam Clerk, do we have the school district online or Zoom?
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I have no hands raised specific to that group, but I do have a couple of hands raised. And I can open the mic for those individuals at this time if you prefer.
You have, are you sure the hands that are raised is not connected to the school district?
No.
Okay.
So I can tell you that there is a city staff person that's has their hand raised, and then there is Greg Worth as well.
Okay, we'll open it up.
I have Greg Worth.
Go ahead, Greg.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Greg Worth, W-I-R-T-H. I reside at 501 State Street. I am a member of the...
I can tell you that there is a city staff person that's has their hand raised, and then oh, geez, Mr. Mayor, too many buttons.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Worth.
Thank you. Again, my name is Greg Worth. I reside at 501 State Street. I am a member of the City Non-Motorized Travel Advisory Council. As Director Knopke mentioned, MTAC fully supports the Warren and Lawrence crossing intersection improvements to shorten the crossing distance. We did have a walk audit and talk in depth regarding the additional crosswalks. And we recognize that, there were some previous conversations about the operations of the schools prior to Central School being rebuilt. I think we recognize that the actual operations have changed rather than planned. In response to some of the school correspondence that was received in mid-June 2020, we had solicited the school and scheduled a walk audit to accommodate school district personnel in response to hearing some concerns from the parent council and other residents, other public commentary. Unfortunately, the school district did not attend that walk audit, which really would have aided in some helpful conversation. I would like to provide some additional commentary to the walk audit that didn't get in your packet. Some additional comments were the vast majority of the school pedestrian traffic crossed 9th Avenue on the south side where the crosswalk was removed. Jaywalking or a diagonal crossing of 9th Avenue and Warren intersection was improved. The vehicular drop-off was very congested. Parking and idling cars severely impeded the pedestrian crossing visibility. The street grades and snow storage exacerbated the congestion and contributed to lack of visibility. Trepidation was observed for young children crossing Warren Street when unaccompanied by an adult. When we did the walk audit, it was in late October of last year, and this is when the school was in their COVID procedures. So school attendance observed may have been a third of what a normal attendance would have been because it was on the AB schedule. So you had half of the kids there on Monday, Tuesday, half the kids there Thursday, Friday. And then there are also a significant number of kids that opted for digital learning. The overly chaotic drop-off was readily apparent. There's lack of definition, limited visibility, and high presence of vehicular traffic contributed to an unsafe pedestrian experience. Students did not use the main entrance on 8th Avenue. Kids play on the playground prior to being staged to enter the building. To enter the playground from Warren, you either enter from the north or the south side of the building, but the parking lot is on the south side. The most easily access to the playground is from the Warren and 9th intersection. Also, we recognize that implementing any crosswalk improvements at Warren and 9th, with the Warren and Lawrence improvements project is the best opportunity with construction efficiencies, and otherwise may never happen as come back as another project. So following our walk audit, MTAC discussed the walk audit and approved a motion to install both crosswalks on 9th Avenue. MTAC really cherishes our role to facilitate projects, but obviously with that facilitation, we desire progress that leads, to hardscape improvements. We request that the city capitalize on this opportunity to provide a safer school access for young children. Now, on behalf of MTAC, we'd recommend award of the base bid and alternatives number 2 and number 3. And alternative number 2 is installing crosswalks on both the north side and the south side of 9th Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have any other hands?
Mr. Mayor, next I have Mark Young.
Go ahead, Mark. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I just wanted to address Commissioner Halliday's question, maybe a little bit about the size of the bulb outs. If you look in your packets, on the plan sheets, you can see the bulb outs. If you look on the kind of that north side of the crosswalk at 9th, or the intersection at 9th, it's about 4 feet on either side that they're currently designed. And so that would be similar to an 8-foot bulb out, which would actually be similar to the width of a fire truck. So hopefully that answers the question a little better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have any others?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have Callie. I believe this is Callie Kine.
Go ahead, Callie.
Good evening. Thank you. So I am Callie Kind. I'm the Helena School District Facilities Director. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about the design approach that was used for Central. We had a very comprehensive design team. We have Robert Pesch and Associates, SMA Architects. We work really closely with the city. And when we build a school, it's not just bricks and mortar. We look at traffic flow. We do traffic studies. We look at, how we're going to get students there through bus transportation, through parent transportation, through pedestrian. And as we all know, Warren comes with a lot of challenges. There's a 40-foot drop between Warren and Cruz. So really, we only had Warren Avenue for bus and parent drop off and pickup. The design was intentional. None of it happened by mistake. It was intentional to have a crosswalk at the Warren and 8th Avenue Promenade. That was something that was really important to the community to keep that consistency. It also was important from a safety aspect. The 9th Avenue crosswalk right there at the entrance to the bus lane was removed. That was a joint decision with the Helena School District, the design team, and the City of Helena. And the school district paid for the removal of that crosswalk in our project. And it was removed for various reasons. First of all, that's where buses come into the bus lane. And we don't want kids crossing a crosswalk right behind buses. If that crosswalk was to be put back in and it had bulb outs, you are going to have buses that are going to stick out beyond that bus lane. And you're going to have kids crossing in a blind spot. And by the time they come beyond a bus, they're going to be in the lane of oncoming traffic. We intentionally did not want that. That is also where the fire lane comes in. We try to keep kids crossing and buses very separate, which is why there's a bulb out at the 8th Avenue Promenade. From the school district's perspective, we heavily oppose a crosswalk being added at that 9th Avenue intersection for all the reasons stated previously. It is a huge safety concern. We put a crossing guard at the 8th Avenue Promenade. The minute you put a crosswalk there, you are basically telling children it is a safe area to cross, and it is not. It's not a safe area to cross. When I grew up here in Helena, there was a student hit crossing between buses out at Jim Darcy. We don't want that to happen at Central School. So from the school district's perspective, we heavily oppose putting back in the crosswalk at 9th Avenue that we already paid to have removed as a joint decision with the City of Helena, the design team, and the Helena School District. We're not opposed to one being down at the Lawrence Warren new intersection that's being built. We're not opposed to that, but we do not want to see one at that 9th Avenue intersection, not where buses are coming in. It's a huge safety concern on our behalf, and we sincerely appreciate you listening to our comments and taking them in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. There's clearly a problem there, Callie. So what do you suggest? How do we solve that problem? Because there is a problem that exists. Kelly?
Okay, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. We've talked about, administratively handling it and bringing kids in through the building to the playground for next year. There's a lot of options that we can handle administratively, but we don't want kids crossing behind buses. You think about kids crossing from east to west, one thing, but think about kids coming from west to east. The minute they come behind a bus, they're in the lane of oncoming traffic. And it's such a safety concern. The school has done different things about trying to break up grade levels and discharging them or having them come in at different areas around the campus to try to alleviate that congestion. But we're still open to, bringing and opening those front doors and bringing all the kids in through the school in the morning and ushering them through the building to the playground. We recognize that families can cross anywhere they want. If a family, a mom and a child or a father and a child want to walk their child across that 9th Avenue, that's fine. But the minute you put a crosswalk there, you invite people to cross that and you imply that it's safe. And that's our biggest concern, is that it's not safe. We're not saying a family couldn't choose to cross that on their own if they want. We don't want to invite children to use that as a safe place to cross, because we don't see it that way. If there was one down on this new intersection where Lawrence would cross Warren, maybe you could do it that way, and then you could come across Lawrence onto the west side there of Warren. Maybe that would be better. But my also concern is the vicinity. When you come up Lawrence headed east and you are going to turn right on Warren, the vicinity from that intersection to that crosswalk is very short. And because it's uphill, people accelerate. So they go to turn right and they're already accelerating, and then boom, they would have to stop. There's just a lot of concerns we see. We think that you can better serve students by getting them away from that and maybe crossing at Lawrence or crossing at that 8th Avenue Promenade. We'd really like to see that happen.
Commissioners?
Maybe for Mr. Konopky, how far with the realigned T-junction at Lawrence and Warren is the car that'll be turning right onto Warren? How far will they be approximately from the northernmost portion of 9th Avenue?
Mayor and Commissioners, if I could, I'd ask Mark Young to speak to that because he's at his computer and has the plans up to reference that exact measurement.
Mark, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so just looking at the plans, it looks like it's just under 150 feet, so probably closer to 140 feet from the newly aligned intersection heading south to that the intersection at 9th.
And so, Mr. Young, just humor me for a second because people tell me I'm pretty dense. Is the new aligned intersection, is that going to make it farther for a vehicle traveling from Lawrence to come to 9th Avenue or closer than the turn onto Warren as it exists today?
So, Mayor and Commissioner, that distance today is actually you're almost looking at the intersection of 9th when you come up the south side to turn right off of Lawrence onto Warren. And so that'll be, you know, much greater distance.
So that dangerous condition that Ms. Kind indicated, the turn from Lawrence onto Warren, where buses are swinging up on a turn at high speed, apparently, that will be eliminated, or at a minimum, that distance is going to be pushed out close to 140 feet if we pass at least the base bid tonight. Is that right?
Yeah, so the distance will be longer. As far as acceleration, it is still heading up a hill from Lawrence intersection toward the 9th intersection. So I'm sure there's some sort of acceleration going on just to drive up the hill. But
And so just follow up, Mr. Mayor, but once a bus under the new aligned plan makes that turn to travel south on Warren, at the time they reach 9th Avenue and that bus bay, is that bus going to be making a turn, or is it just going to be going straight at that point once it's on that 140 feet?
no, then it will be straight. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any others, Commissioner?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Callie Kind.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Kind. I'm wondering, can you tell us what kind of communication the school district or the school has with parents and students about why that intersection the district views as being unsafe? And I guess how would people know not to be crossing there regularly?
You have the floor, Kelly.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just wanted to follow up to one thing Commissioner Holiday said. It's not the buses that are accelerating up to that. The buses don't come up Lawrence Avenue. Those were just regular traffic. The buses are coming and swinging into the bus loop. They're not traveling up Lawrence and headed south. So, and they're not traveling at high speeds. I apologize. I'm not sure where that comment came from, but I was talking about just regular traffic as they come up today and people veer off to turn south on Warren. They're accelerating. They're going uphill and accelerating. That is not the traffic flow for buses. The buses do need to be able to come in. They are traveling south on Warren and they need to come in beyond 9th Avenue and swing into a bus loop. And they need to be able to be tail to tail on that without hanging out. And so the bulb, although that intersection at Lawrence and Warren will push back, it doesn't change the concern that students would be traveling on a crosswalk directly behind a bus. And if all those buses aren't tucked in, you could have the tail end of a bus sticking out. So just wanted to clarify on that. To answer the question about communication with the parents, so we've done a couple things. During the course of building Central School, we had a lot of community meetings. We did a lot of those in partnership with the City of Helena. We had several at the First Baptist Church in Montana across the street. We have a lot of communication. I've communicated personally with some parents. I've dialogued through email with any emails that I've received. I know that Principal John Stilson has had a lot of communication with his community. I know he has communicated with his PTO group, and we do value tremendously people's concerns. It's not as if we don't value those concerns. We do, but I just want to step back and again and say that the team of experts that we had on this design team, this is what their experience and their education is in. And we solicited a lot of people to be a part of that design team. And it was collectively unanimous, including the City of Helena, that this was an unsafe intersection. And I know it's a convenience factor. It's not convenient to not have it there, but we're here for one reason. We serve students, and we do every day what's best for students, and student safety is our priority. And so it was not negotiable to leave that 9th Avenue intersection. In no way can I see how you can safely have a crosswalk directly behind a bus lane. I cannot see that, and neither can any person that served on that design team.
Ms. Klein, I think Commissioner Dane is talking about since the design has happened and we've noticed some of those problems. Have you all communicated with the parents and other stakeholders since then?
Yes, I personally have responded to emails, but I know that Principal Stilson, I spoke with him recently as last Thursday, has had communication with his PTO group. I know he has communication with his parents directly. I know that that is an ongoing dialogue that happens. And so, yes, that communication is continuous. And I think it's an unfortunate situation where there's a want to have it there. And from a safety perspective, it's not just, we can't support a crosswalk at 9th Avenue. The school district can't. We can't support that because of all the safety concerns we presented, but we are committed to finding a way to get kids, into the building and into the playground safely. Absolutely. We're never going to stop looking at those opportunities, but we don't want to invite children with an identified crosswalk to cross behind buses. We can't do that in good conscience.
So what has the school district done to alleviate that problem? Because I hear you saying that you are committed to the kids' safety, and right now we notice that they're traveling. I mean, it's not safe presently. So what has the school district done since they've noticed that?
Right. So like I said, Mr. Mayor, Principal Stilson has changed where by grade level, he's broken up and had different grade levels pick up on different parts of the property to avoid that congestion. So we dismiss and we receive certain grade levels come in on the west side from Cruz Avenue. Certain grade levels, come out of the front of the building and they go to the north. Other grade levels come out and they go to the south. So we've tried to separate those groups and try to alleviate that congestion and try to create a safer environment. And what I have been told is that has made some improvements, but I think it's an evolving conversation. And clearly the fact that Warren Avenue sits 40 feet higher than Cruz Avenue, this clearly has not been a recent issue. I mean, this has been an issue on that site for over 100 years of education. Our original schools were 1875 and still the demographics are the same. But it was really important to the community that we rebuild on that site, despite the fact that it came with some challenges. And so I appreciate that there are concerns that are ongoing, and I can just assure you that we're going to continue to engage in those conversations. We're going to continue to work with our parents and our community to do what's right, but we just feel very strongly the 9th Avenue crosswalk is not the solution. We are open to a crosswalk at Lawrence and Warren, and then maybe across Lawrence to the school property, but not directly behind the bus lane. We just can't condone kids walking behind buses. We specifically put the bulb out at 8th Avenue to separate bus traffic from parent traffic. We also don't want parents going up against buses. We certainly don't want children going up against buses as a pedestrian. So I think it's an ongoing dialogue, Mr. Mayor, that we have to keep engaging in. And I think it continues to evolve. And we're never going to stop that dialogue. We just feel really strongly about this crosswalk.
And you know, I feel really strongly about the kids' safety. If this is just ongoing, this is not helping the situation at all. We need to find a solution. Any other comment?
I have a question for Ms. Kind. Do you know what date because all the plans were made with the expectation that children were going to enter at the 8th Avenue front entrance of the school, which was designed to be a safe crossing. Do you know what date Central School internally changed the process so that all kids enter up at the playground entrance on 9th?
No, I don't, Mr. Commissioner Holiday. I don't know. As the director, I don't know when that was changed. I know that it was important to the community that they wanted that 8th Avenue promenade. I know they wanted the wall, they called the Humpty Dumpty wall. That was really important to the community to have that, to sit out front to receive their students. Obviously, we have gates to access the playground at various locations. We have one on the east side, we have one on the west side, we have one on the north side, and we have one on the south side. So you can enter the playground on all 4 sides of that property. I don't know, I can't say for certain because I don't know if there was a formal communication to say all kids go through that gate. So I apologize. I can't speak to that. I just know that by design, fulfilling what the wants and desires of that community were at the time, that they wanted that 8th Avenue promenade. But you can enter that playground from all 4 sides of the property.
So I'll give you a little hint here, and my numbers aren't exact, but policy changed about 5 minutes after Central opened its doors. Heading up to that playground. I might be off by a minute or two. One of the parent council members can probably correct me. That this conversation was elevated to me as a commissioner within that maybe 3 minutes of that 5-minute policy change as an extreme concern. It was elevated to John Stilson after that. Do you understand the frustration on the part of parents who hear that there's going to be a collaborative conversation ongoing for 2 years? Get any form of tangible solution proposed on it? Do you understand how emails, many of which are copy and paste back to parents, frustrate them when people forward them to me and say, I don't understand the school district's position on this. Why aren't we trying to work towards a solution here? Do you understand how that can be frustrating to then tell them once again, this is an evolving situation. We'll just have to wait and see and hope to do better in the future?
Commissioner Holiday, as a parent of elementary school students, I absolutely can appreciate that. And at this point, all I can do is apologize. My door is always open. My office is open. I hand out my cell phone number freely. I'll put it on record for you guys tonight if you want. 431-2797. I will take calls from anybody at any time. This is my hometown. I went K-12 here. This is my children's hometown. I am committed to finding solutions. I apologize. I am not the administrator of that school. I am the facilities director. And I'm not going to make excuses for why things happen, but I'm on record saying I am committed to working with that community to find a solution. I understand how frustrating that must have been, and I will apologize on behalf of the Helena School District for the frustration that you as parents have taken on. It's not okay. But we do need to work together to find a solution, and one that is not only safe for kids, but serves that community well.
So maybe one more follow-up, Ms. Kind. So you mentioned that kids crossing at 9th would be behind sort of the blind zone on the back of a bus. If I'm using the terminology incorrectly, I apologize. If a kid crosses at 9th today, is the same problem in existence?
The same problem in existence, which is why we don't have a crosswalk there to invite the traffic. We can't stop somebody from crossing anywhere around the property, right? But we put the crosswalk at 8th Avenue to invite, this is a safe place to cross. This is where we want students to flow.
Okay, but the problem exists today then. If students are crossing there, they're experiencing the same danger you're telling us will exist if we put in safety mechanisms for the kids that our street maintenance people tell us create pedestrian safety.
I would say you would create more because you would be insinuating to families and children with a crosswalk that it is safe. I would imagine it's being used today, just like how anyone crosses anywhere. But the minute you put a crosswalk there, you insinuate it is safe, and you would, I would have to believe, invite more traffic to cross there.
Have you been out there recently?
I'm out at these sites a lot, yes.
It'd be hard to figure out how to invite more people to cross that street. This morning, it looked as though literally every child in the school crossed it. And I'm being a little bit glib there, but it's pretty incredible how many people cross that street every morning as it exists today. And, you know, it's okay. We planned this. Like, heck, I was here when we, you know, I don't know if we had to approve anything to do it, but we did it. It's okay to say a plan failed, and it's okay to look for better solutions in the future. And that's what I'm trying to figure out here is I see kids running around fire trucks. I see kids dodging U-turns, and we need to figure out something. And it's been going on 2 years now. And it's pretty tragic for the parents of kids who have to deal with that.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Kelly. Do we have anybody from the public? 1 minute, sir.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'll entertain which one you'd like to take first. I believe Mark Young, staff person.
Okay,
City of
then we'll
Helena.
go to the gentleman in the chamber. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Court Harrington, and I live at 522 North Davis. And that 500 block of Davis is between 11th and 9th Avenue. I probably consider myself primarily a pedestrian, and I walk a lot. In fact, I walked to the meeting today, and I go down 9th Avenue, cross Warren at 9th, and then go down Lawrence. And I probably do that maybe 20, 25 times a week. And I've been sitting there, sometimes it's sort of frustrating listening to this. There's a crosswalk on 9th and Warren. It's unmarked. And I get just, as a pedestrian, I just get beside myself when I say, well, there's no crosswalk, when they mean there's no marked crosswalk. And when I hear Ms. Kind say, it's safer to have an unmarked crosswalk than it is to have a marked crosswalk, which just seems to defy logic. And the only thing is, I think maybe she believes that by taking the markings away, you've eliminated that crosswalk. And as a pedestrian, I use that crosswalk all the time. I'm also the grandparent of a student at Central, and I walk my grandchild to school some days, particularly last year and maybe the year before, but I typically pick her up. And because I was concerned, I'm probably one of those people that emailed Commissioner Halliday about, can't we do something about this? And I participated in the audit, the walk audit performed by the non-motorized Transportation Advisory Committee. And then after that meeting, and I was, part of my motivation for going to that walk audit is I was actually hoping that someone from the school district would be there, but they weren't. And I've reached out to Principal Stilson, and I've also made calls to Kelly Kind, and I've never gotten any kind of satisfaction. But I've got issues with them with snow removal as well. But after that walk around, I conducted my own pedestrian count. And this was back in November, and there was kids Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday. And my granddaughter actually was in a pod with digital learning, so she wasn't there, but I went down anyway. And so 28% of the students in the morning crossed at 8th Avenue, and 72% of the students who came in the morning crossed at 9th Avenue. So it was 3 to 1. And in the afternoon, it was 23% crossed at 8th Avenue and 77% crossed at 9th Avenue. And then in anticipation of this meeting, I went there this morning, and 85 students crossed, or pedestrians crossed 9th Avenue, 45 crossed at 8th Avenue. And so it's a little, it's not quite as much, but there were some circumstances this morning that maybe would explain why fewer people crossed at 9th Avenue. One was there was a big fire truck parked in front, and I saw actually people, when I was doing the count, come in and walk up to 8th and cross. And also, I think the city is doing something on Rodney, and you couldn't cross Rodney at 9th Avenue either. But there's a lot of parking there by the cathedral, and there's not much parking on 8th Avenue. And so people who even drive their kids to school will park in that little turnaround at the cathedral or along 9th Avenue, and then walk their children to Central, and they all cross at 9th Avenue. And it sort of only makes sense. I heard that, there's an entrance up some stairs on Lawrence, and there's one on Cruz. But if you think where children live, nobody comes from Last Chance Gulch to go to school. I mean, they're up in the Hawthorne school district. They come from north and west of Central School. And so that they get funneled into 9th Avenue.
Sir, you want to wrap up now?
What's that?
You want to wrap up?
Wrap up? Okay. So I'm one of your constituents. The school district is not a constituent. And they get to have their say over a constituent, and I find that offensive. And it's my safety, my granddaughter's safety, the safety of the Central School students, and wrapping it up would be great. And I would urge you to adopt the alternative 2 and 3, as Greg Worth mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any others? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Collins and commissioners, my name is Chelsea Segrist. I live on 611 9th Avenue, and I am the student council president for the parents at Central School. I do want to submit to you a petition that we had a number of parents, over 60 parents, sign asking that there be a bulb out and a crosswalk reinstated at 9th Avenue. Currently, the students are asked to enter the school property. Actually, I'm going to back up just one second and thank you for working with the school district to build the school in the first place and to rebuild that school in that neighborhood. We definitely, as parents, appreciate having our school back in our neighborhood. So the students are asked to enter the school property in the morning through the playground. The playground, as you know, is located on the north side of 9th and Warren. This is not patrolled currently in the mornings by any crossing guard. As you heard I have seen a response from Ms. Kind, as I have tried to interact with her as well, that there is a crossing guard on 8th Avenue. You'll see from the picture I submitted this morning, there is no crossing guard in the morning at 8th Avenue. They do have crossing guards in the afternoons, one technically with a stop sign at 8th Avenue. There is a maybe unofficial crossing guard at an employee of the school district, though, at 9th Avenue. So as the school district is pointing out, this is a place of traffic. This is a place of concern. We are putting somebody at 9th Avenue in the afternoons. The families and children have to walk partway into the street currently to see around cars that are parked on Warren in order to cross the street. I've witnessed that myself. A third grader who consistently walks his kindergarten sister to school looks around the cars and then pulls her back in order to make sure that there's nobody coming. I'm curious to know the distance from the back of the last bus in their designated parking area to the north side, or north side of 9th Avenue. That's where the parents are asking that the new crosswalk be placed, or crossing lines be placed there. We'd prefer both places. But the north side near the corner of the cathedral, I don't think that it's not directly behind the buses. There's quite a distance there. I don't know if it's been measured before, but the bus, it's not that children are crossing directly behind buses. They are actually, I would guess, from the distance of that north side in front by the cathedral is of equal distance to the front of where the buses pull out. So I'm not sure that that's going to be of a concern, because the majority of the traffic and the 300 students who come to that school, the parents are often bringing students to the north end where the playground is. We have submitted pictures. I've submitted other pictures to the commission in regards to this. We hope that you'll take into consideration the petition with the names and signatures of multiple parents who might not be here tonight, but assuming that we are representing them today.
Thank you. Would you forward the petition over to the clerk, please?
Thank you.
Do you have any others? Please.
Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Kelly McLean and I live at 711 North Rodney Street. So I'm sort of northeast of Central School and I'm a Central parent. And so my kiddos prefer crossing at this unmarked crosswalk. So just a few of the things I wanted to cover. So this is the main entrance to the playground for the school. And all of the students have been directed almost the entire time Central's been opened to enter in that entrance. It's also the main access to the playground for the community after school hours. That's the easiest way to get into that. And most of the classrooms sort of exit out onto that section of the playground. So it's the natural exit to the building as well for most of the students. It's also where the majority of the parking for parents when they're picking up and dropping off is. They tend to park either in the cathedral parking lot or right south of the cathedral there and drop their kids off and then run back to their car. So it's obviously the most convenient corner to cross at, but I think the more important thing is that it's the corner everyone is crossing at anyways. So even if it wasn't the most convenient, it's just where everyone is and it's where the danger is. I really wanted to address the safety concerns that have come up. As for it being an emergency lane for the fire department, I suppose you want to keep it less congested in case they need to access it, but obviously it's congested. It doesn't matter if that's the fire lane, that's where people are crossing. So it's already congested. Adding that crosswalk is not going to make more people. And then the school bus thing, I know a couple of people have mentioned this. Because of the snow removal, we have a light pole right next, it's to the south of where the people cross. So they cross north of this light pole. And I used to be a school bus driver who had to enter the central school bus zone. And so that light pole actually prevents that 14-foot tail swing, that blind spot on the school buses sometimes. We can't hit the kids when they cross the crosswalk because that light pole is ahead of them. So that light pole, I know some people want to remove it for snow removal reasons, but the school buses for tail swing sweeping, it's actually made the kids much safer at that crosswalk. So it is actually impossible with that pole there for a school bus to tail swing sweep any of the children crossing that crosswalk. So I really think it's no more danger to the kids crossing there than crossing at 8th from the school buses, because the school buses will just be facing them head on, because this is getting a little technical, but you can't pull in until much later into the central school zone. So your tail avoids that light pole. So it's actually a pretty safe place to cross school bus wise. And so I really wanted to address that. We're really excited about that stop sign and teeing it out on Lawrence, because we're hoping that will slow folks down, because it's just a yield right now. So they can whip around. And yeah, as a school bus driver, I would never come up Lawrence. That is steep and the winters here are rough. I think that covers the main things I wanted to mention. I've talked to a lot of parents and we cross there even if the crosswalk isn't there. And we feel safer if there was a marked crosswalk and drivers would have to notice it and abide by it. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any others? Madam Clerk, any online?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have Megan Harrington.
Go ahead, Megan, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name's Megan Harrington. I live at 522 North Davis, and I'm a parent of a third grader at Central and a member of the Parent Council. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate some of the points that have been made as a parent. So I heard from the school district a lot about intention and the intention of the design. And I just wanted to emphasize that there is a difference between intention and then functional use. And because of how the playground entrances were designed, that children enter at that entrance on 9th and Warren, that functionally, that is just where the parents and the kids go for pickup and drop off. And without a marked crosswalk, cars are less inclined to slow down and stop. And I think marked crosswalks signal to cars that there are potentially pedestrians walking. And it's not necessarily going to invite any more people than already use that crosswalk. And so I also heard that there's been talk of different ways of entering the playground. And in the 2 years that Central has been open, that has just been the natural entrance. And it was my understanding that it was difficult for children to enter through the front door because of staffing. When children enter the school, the teachers are not looking out for the kids, they're doing their prep. And so it would be the responsibility of paras to watch kids, but kids are also on the playground. And so paras need to be on the playground. And as I understand it, staffing can be difficult in the district. So options of entering through the front door didn't work when the school first opened. And I don't foresee that as a parent and sort of understanding how staffing works in the district, that would be a workable solution. And so it seems that for the foreseeable future, that entrance to the school in the mornings and the exit in the afternoons will be at 9th and Warren. And since that is where the entrance and exit will be, that is where parents and children will also be. And to increase safety, we should put a marked crosswalk there. And so I urge you to choose the plans that include that. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have Amy Barrett.
You have the floor, Amy.
Let's see, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you for listening. I own Lasso the Moon, the toy store downtown, so obviously I care very much about the children in the whole community, but I'm going to speak just as an adult right now who walks to work and walks down 9th. I live on Davis and 9th, the corner of Davis and 9th. So I walk down 9th, and I am one of those that crosses without a crosswalk and heads down Lawrence. And I have to step over the curb and the grass and all that. But that's my preferred route down to my toy store. And, I would love, I'm hoping that the reconfiguring the teeing of Lawrence and Warren will help with that traffic flow. But as people have said, people are coming around that Y there and going uphill and having to speed up. So it is a really awful intersection for pedestrians. But I too would really think that a marked crosswalk there at 9th and Warren would really benefit. And also the crosswalk at the new Lawrence and Warren intersection as well, for those who are coming from the north side of town or the north side of Warren to be able to cross safely. So thank you very much.
Commissioners, Mayor, I do have some written comment I'll read into the record at this time. My name is Jaren Borrego, and I live at 416 North Beatty Street, and I commute by bicycle through the 9th and Warren intersection. I travel through this intersection 4 times per day, 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., and 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. I weave in and out of parents and children dropping off through the entire Warren and 9th intersection daily. This is a heavily used intersection for pedestrian traffic, regardless if the crosswalk is there or not. The crosswalk would greatly improve safety for those that already cross there despite the removed crosswalk. The removal of the crosswalk has not dissuaded children and parents from using this intersection. I also travel from my home through this intersection as a pedestrian with my dogs at least 5 times per week. The intersection is used by more than just the students and parents, and all pedestrians could benefit from a crosswalk. I strongly support the crosswalk at this intersection to increase pedestrian safety and connect. And then it ends.
Thank you. Do we have any others? No. Okay, you please continue.
Mayor, if I could, just to clarify the additive alternates that may have gotten a little bit lost. So the first one is just to install the crosswalk across the north crossing of Warren and 9th.
Okay.
The second alternative would install both the north and the south. The south one does put puts the ramp basically in the same driveway as the emergency access driveway. That is an allowable design. I think it's one that we, may want to consider that could be some conflicts there, being right in basically the curb cut. And then the third one is just the irrigation to water the grass that's intended to be out in that additional section.
The third one is what?
An irrigation, in addition to irrigate the expanded landscape, if any of the additive alternates were chosen. The other one that I would like to, if we move forward with any of these, we would like to consider making it a one-way southbound movement along Warren there. Yes, we know that would cause some inconvenience, but it would allow for a little bit more room for the parent, the pickup drop off. And again, the passenger doors open to the school, and try to enhance that drop off feature along that route. Plus the oncoming traffic that was spoke about would be eliminated. It would only be the southbound movement. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Thank you, Director Kanopki. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mayor, I have a question about the design. I know when we were going through this process of thinking about safe routes to school for Jefferson and the Montana and Highland intersection, you all and the contractor, brought forward, I think, some pretty creative ideas as far as how to potentially route people across Montana. And I was skeptical. I think, there were some questions around sort of designing it so it was that kids were kind of going kitty corner across. And my sense is it's worked quite well. I don't know how you all have felt about it, but it seems like that design ultimately has really worked. And kids and individuals are crossing in the marked crosswalk. So one question I had, because as I was looking at the different alternatives and thinking about some of the concerns of the school district around the south side of North and that particular crosswalk, thinking about the alternative that just provides it on the one side. But then we all got this video, and it's quite clear that a fair amount of children are crossing, and the ones that I'm particularly concerned about are the children that are not with parents. They're crossing on their own on the south side of 9th. So a question that I had for you was, and I seem to recall maybe a discussion about this in one of the work groups a year or so. I attended one of those where there was some discussion about creating a marked crosswalk that was slightly diagonal so that you sort of address maybe the concerns about the school buses in that area, and just sort of veer that crosswalk from the south side of 9th, but sort of veer it a little north. Was that discussed as a potential option, or are there concerns with that type of design on this street?
Mayor and Commissioners, I do not know if that exact option was contemplated, but human nature, you're crossing from the south, you're not going to go north to go south to stay in the marked crosswalk. People are going to just A to B. That's their typical. So, you know, making a diagonal from the south side over to the north, that could be a possibility to be marked. We could look at the distances and see how it works geometrically. But typically, the reason why we don't like skewed crosswalks, and yes, the Highland one is working well, is the more perpendicular a crosswalk to the road, it's the narrowest width for that crosswalk. So anytime you start to introduce angle, you introduce the length of time that it's going to take to cross that crossing. So that's why we try to make them as perpendicular as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions for Director Konopki?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple.
Please go ahead.
In a similar vein. So I'm wondering if we were to adopt the number 2 and number 3 alternates or alternatives, what can we do to help address some of the safety concerns that have been brought up in terms of the buses? Because I mean, I really don't want kids trying to look around, the back of a bus, which I understand is probably happening right now anyway, but what can we do to mitigate those risks? And then I guess and you started talking about this a little bit, but what happens to the fire lane if we were to adopt number 2?
Mayor and Commissioners, the fire lane stays. There's a design concept in the best practices that allows designers have realized that sometimes there's a driveway right where a crosswalk needs to be, so they allow that to be on the edge of the driveway. So the emergency travel or the emergency access doesn't change. It just gets a truncated dome on the south side of it. As far as what the commission can do to, mitigate some of the safety concerns, the biggest one is to consider making Warren that one way. If you talk to parents and you talk and people, they're right. It's a congested area. The school was put back in its historical location, which is great, I think, for the city and the historical nature. Unfortunately, when the school was originally built and that land around there platted, the streets were considerably narrower than what we would, like to see now to accommodate all the pedestrian and bicycle and boulevards and everything that we have now. So by making that a one-way, or at least allowing staff to consider looking at that option, we would be able to, address a couple of the concerns by the school district. The congestion. If everybody going both ways is dropping kids off, then that would just mean everybody's going to be going one way with that option. We would have to take a little bit more time to look at that and see if that's feasible to expect that. The parents would do that, but I think it would mitigate some of the snow concerns, the berming of the snows by the parent drop off by the buses. And then just the narrow nature of the roadway itself.
Thank you, Director. My question to you, I know doing it one way will take a lot of time. So, but this problem is immediate. So can we do both?
Mayor and Commissioners, yes. I mean, we're not asking you to table this to let us consider the one way.
Right, okay.
We're asking you to, in conjunction with this, if we move forward with the bulb outs, or even if we don't, to allow us to look at that one-way option at that location to try to minimize congestion.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the manager. At what point, let's hypothetically say we approved alternatives 2 and 3, at what point would you see us taking up that possibility of the directional change?
Mayor and
Thank you.
Commissioners,
Yeah. Thank you.
we
for your
could look
question.
at that immediately. We could start with the outreach to the neighborhood. School's winding down, obviously, but that doesn't stop us from reaching out to the community around there. And, it could go into, the beginning of next school season. Ultimately, the best scenario would be to implement it prior to the school start so that it wasn't something that came up in the middle of the school year. So, if we could get it done this summer, great. We could, institute it, get the notices out to the parents and everything. If we needed extra time so we get more public comment from the school, then, that's something that we could do over the next year and then implement over the next summer.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I was just going to comment. I mean, I think if we think we have a fair amount of public feedback on just a marked crosswalk, I would be reticent to move quickly on a directional change of the street. I think we can certainly make a decision today. I think it behooves the staff to spend some time to sort of study it and get a sense of what the potential impact is. But I also wouldn't want any action we take today to be a sort of a consensus on moving forward with that, because I think that's a pretty significant change. And as Ms. Kine pointed out, I mean, this is a street that is 40 feet above the street of, Cruz Avenue. So, I mean, it's a thoroughfare in an area that I have no idea, right, how a one-way would operate. And so that would be my just comment on that. That's a pretty significant change that I would imagine we'd want a fair amount of public input.
Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Oh, go ahead, Manager.
Thank you. It was just, thank you, Commissioner O'Laughlin. I was going to ask David, how long does that, it was great tee up. How long does that kind of study and analysis take? And how did you arrive at that one way, just to try and get some context around how much work you put into it so far, and then how long it would take for you to come back with that?
Mayor, Commissioners, it was always an option. I think we suggested it during the original planning stages during Central. I can't remember if it was an option that was put out to the public for comment, but we have the school list of the students that we could, funnel any public meetings through the school district to notify any parents over the summer break and have those meetings. The reason that we originally was the congested nature of that, and we know that mixing the parent and the bus drop off, and then having that promenade across 8th just introduces a lot, because the pedestrians get the right of way. If there's school children waiting on the one side to cross, the crossing guard's going to stop traffic. Well, that just backs up that traffic and causes more congestion. So, I think we could get a pretty good grasp, have a couple public meetings over the summer, and maybe a month before or so, maybe a month and a half before school starts, we could come back and say we need more time. We need to proceed, with it, and then we could study the two-way traffic through there with the intersection, and then come with a recommendation, either in the middle of the semester and then have an implementation plan for next summer. One thing to note with the Central School building, 7th Avenue between Warren and Cruz is a one-way now, and it's a one-way westbound. So if we chose to do the one-way southbound, you would have a circular motion taking people down to Cruz, so that it wouldn't conflict with current one-ways or that traffic flow.
Mayor, if I may ask a follow-up question. Director, when you say it was always on the table, would you say that it was discussed as much as the bulb outs were, or is it just an item that had not been and has not received enough attention? Just trying to understand whether or not it has received as much attention as all other elements, or if you're actually saying that we must go back, just to get your professional opinion.
Mayor and Commissioners, I think that it probably didn't receive as much as the bulb outs. It was something that staff brought forward in meetings with the school district. And so I believe professionally and for the good of everyone up there too, that we would need time to look at it to make the correct decision.
Thank you, Madam Manager and Director Kanopke. So,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
just really briefly, I think, well, you summarized it correctly, that there's clearly an issue right now that needs to be addressed. And I would just ask of staff, as you start going through this process as well, if, this passes, that if there are other solutions in addition to a one-way or otherwise, that you consider those and make sure that we're covering all of our bases in terms of, what our options are to make things more safe.
So for the bid award that led us on this journey,
Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion if that's
for the
helpful.
bid award, but we still need a decision on the other one. So yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion and we can see.
If I may, I'm sorry, Mayor and Commissioners, I don't want to interrupt. There was some written public comment. I'll read into the record if that's okay.
Please, go ahead.
Stuart Segrist. The school district and Ms. Kind ignores reality. Families and pedestrians are crossing at 9th. The city must face this reality and make the crossing safer by putting in a marked crosswalk to address this current liability. If there is a concern about exactly how to address, the city should put in white lines while it determines whether or not to put in bulb outs. This is from Stuart Segrist, 611 9th Avenue.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to award the base bid and additive alternatives 2 and 3 for the Lawrence and Warren intersection reconstruction project, city project number 19-08, to Helena Sand and Gravel in the amount of $238,769.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, how do we address this one? The, what do you call it? Crosswalk. Are we addressing that? Okay, good. B, 6th Ward Sidewalk Repair Service Award. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. This project on the 6th Ward intersection corners, they were inspected and evaluated for ADA compliance. During the inspection, it was noted that there are numerous trip hazards, and this project is further movement towards our compliance with ADA. I'll turn it over to Director Konopke for any further details that might be important in this award.
You have the floor, Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So we had brought this forward to you some time ago with the TIF award. As the city manager noted, we noted a lot of slip, trip, and fall hazards when we evaluated the area for a future mill and overlay project. The city went to the railroad TIF board, and the railroad TIF board awarded the city $100,000, which street maintenance matched for a total of $200,000. This is the consideration of the award to White Resources. And I guess to make it short and sweet, we move to award the 6th Ward Sidewalk Repair Services Contract Project TSD 36 to White Resources Group, Inc. for the amount not to exceed $200,000. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Comments or questions from the Commission?
Just a brief question for Mr. Konopki. What's the timeline on getting this completed this summer?
Mayor and commissioners, once we give them notice of award, we can sit down with them and see what their schedule is permitting right now. Our hopes is to expend as much, if not all, of the money this summer. White Resources seemed excited to work with the city, so we can come back or an informational only to update the commission on that.
Thank you. Any other comments for Director Konopki? Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no written public comment and I have no hands raised on this item.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will move to award the 6th Ward Sidewalk Repair Services Contract Project TSD 36 to White Resources Group, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $200,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Communications proposals from the commissioners. We'll move along. Report of the city attorney.
Mayor, Commissioners, I have a long one tonight.
Oh, geez.
I'm just kidding, Mayor, Commissioners. Just a real quick, brief update on the Beatty Street Trailhead case. That was the Nick Sovner and Sherry Thornton sued to stop the Beatty Street Trailhead project. You may recall that the district court denied their request for an injunction to stop that project. The project was completed, but the case has still been lingering, but the plaintiffs voluntarily dismissed with prejudice last week, so the case is formally done.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Attorney Jordan. And that's all for litigation strategy also?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Report of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Good evening.
Good evening.
I wanted to just say how much I've enjoyed going to the farmers market. I'm not sure how many of you have been able to get out and enjoy. This last weekend was a really great event, and I know there are a lot of events that are opening up in our community, and also excited to attend the rodeo that is coming at the end of July, which I've not had the pleasure of attending this year. So just wanted to give a bit of kudos to those coordinating the farmers market. It was really, really terrific. The item on the agenda that I have for you all is the official submittal of the city manager's budget this evening. And I know that while I think there's a PowerPoint quickly that's coming up in front of you, the clerk of the commission, Ms. Claiborne, shared to you copies of a handout, and I'll also share out to you an email. It is a summary of the changes within the budget over last year by way of line item additions, specifically the FTE, and then capital outlay items that are within the budget and their alignment within your strategic outcomes. The intention was to make more clear the efforts of the team to try and align the work that they're doing with the expectations you all have and how they see some of that work. It will seem confusing at some point when you'll say, how does this vehicle replacement within this group actually align with our intention of improved neighborhoods? Those kinds of questions I'm happy to help answer as we go through the next several weeks of the budget, preliminary budget adoption. But my hope was to respond to the question, which I had received last week, about how do these requests actually align? And I wanted to at least give you somewhere to start with as you start really scrutinizing the next pieces of the budget, which means your actual adoption of the preliminary budget with any amendments that you might bring forward. Next slide, please. Unless I have control. Oh, okay. Just as a reminder, these are the strategic and key strategic outcomes and key activities that were adopted earlier this year, and the effort of our team to implement wildly important goals. Those are goals that the directors and their leadership team and staff all work towards identifying longer term movement and then implementing key activities each year in support of your strategic outcomes. So our hope is that there's alignment. I look forward to hearing back from you, and we'll have another conversation with you on just that work plan itself. Next slide, please. Within the budget, you'll find this is the first year we're really pushing into the adoption of some policies that are needed within the City of Helena, in particular reserves. When we set reserve policies, the importance really lies in what the risk exposure is within the fund itself, the volatility of the revenue sources and expenditures, and then the dependency on subsidies that that particular fund has had. I know that the finance team, and under the direction of the finance director, Danielson, have spent a great deal of time thinking over the types of expectations to implement those policies. You'll see those as part of this adoption process within the budget. Next slide, please. You'll also note that I am submitting to you a balanced budget. That budget is balanced based on Montana Code annotated and as summarized here. The expectation is that your projected beginning cash balance plus estimated revenue does not exceed total expenditures, and that is exactly what we have submitted to you and I'm submitting to you. In the beginning, we had a draft preliminary example of what the general fund looked like. Just wanted to share what that looks like again here. Next slide. There's been conversations. We've had 6 working sessions between, and really what has been a process that is the draft review of the iterations the team has gone through and answering questions you might have about the particular submittals by each of the departments before today. One of the larger conversations has been around the use of structural balance within the general fund in particular. And structural balance is further defined as total projected revenues equaling or exceeding total projected expenditures plus spending excess funding balance on one-time non-routine expenditures is actually discouraged. So you'll see the balancing that I've suggested and am submitting as part of this budget meets the balanced budget. The structural balance, I don't believe we're in a fiscal stability location to actually adopt. Next slide. Part of the conversation around structural balance is also the conversation around the policies and cost of living adjustment. This year is the first where our new Human Resources Director, Renee McMahon, she has put together in consultation with our finance team a method of how to calculate cost of living based on 3 metrics and then suggested. So you'll see the Bureau of Business and Economic Research, the quarterly census of employment and wages, and then the Montana Regional Labor and Statistics housing-based data is also compared. Those 3 data sets are listed here. The 2.2 is very conservative when you're looking at the cost of homes going up 10.25% just in 2019 to 20. Obviously, data sets are lagging. Clearly, the market has changed. The same with quarterly living wage increases and that 6.3% average increase last year. So overall, the 2.2 is in relationship to the team. In the big picture, Director McMahon will be looking over all of our staffing plan as well as the classification system. We have some serious compression issues that we're dealing with within classifications where people are within grades that are vastly within positions that are vastly different and in the same grades. And so what results is compression over time because the type of activities are so very different. So a part of the adjustments that you see within positions that are currently filled are related to those compression analysis that have been done so far, but more work will be done in the coming years. It will take years to adjust this system to clarify what reduce our compression issues. I had shared earlier when Commissioner Halliday had shared a question around the ROI for the streets assessment that I would be providing to you the commissioner discretion balance, and want to note just a couple of things. Within the general fund, you'll see we have set from the far left to right. General fund, each of the funds are made available on the left, and then in the ending balance, FY21, that is our projection. We also see excess reserves. So we've taken our reserve policies, identified what that ending balance would look like, and then adopted the projected total revenue, then set another policy reserve, and looked at the excess total, which results in how you actually calculate new spending over either one time or reoccurring. At the end, net excess reserves available is the last balancing point. Lots of conversation was around how much general fund savings was left. This year we had, as you know, reimbursements through the CARES Act. Those reimbursements resulted in savings in the general fund, which we'll be talking about in our next meeting together, of around 1.4 million. I pulled that out, and then you see you have about $766,000, $67,000 within the general fund to distribute as you choose for one-time particular activities. Same down if you look at streets, the streets assessment, the Civic Center. That negative balance is in relationship to the expectation that we will be sharing over a revenue reserve, sharing over funds to the general fund. Those dollars are calculated within the main. They are not necessary. It's not necessary during that balance at one time availability that we hit the general fund for them. So that negative balance is based in knowledge that it will be already covered within total spending. If you have any questions on that, I'll open up to questions at the end. Ms. Claiborne, next slide. Next step, so today is the 7th, so tomorrow, if you would please submit to me any of your asks for one time, that 1.4 million left to be spent, and I will put it into the budget calculator. That budget calculator will be sent back out to you all, and individually you will respond with your priorities within the spending. And then on June 10th by 5 p.m., you go ahead and complete your submittals on the 14th, and then at the 16th, we'll discuss what your consensus is in moving towards that spending. That could include adopting carryover usage into the FY22 budget. So it's important that you have both of those in mind as you're working towards any amendments that you would like to make to my budget submittal. We'll also make sure that on June 23rd, we'll try and share what we can see may be effects of the modifications of those FY22 budget amendments. And then the 28th is the actual public hearing. During that public hearing, we'll ask for motions on edits, and starting July 1, you'll be using a preliminary budget. This year, we have shared during the working sessions the importance of adopting a final budget, which includes any excess revenue that has not been incorporated, as well as the final levy setting from the county and the state. So that final adoption, actually, we look forward to seeing what our total revenue is, as we believe that structural balance will not only be included by capturing those revenues, as we should be doing every year, but also evaluating what we're going to be spending the next several months doing, which is charging back administrative charges to funds that we have not had time to complete appropriately. Next slide. So just a quick summary. This is one of our most transparent budgets here in Helena. We have Be Heard. We have been using Be Heard before getting to this place. Every time there's a revision or an update to the budget, the Be Heard site is updated with the step in the process. We're also, we had the 6 pre-manager working sessions, and then we've been using the balancing act calculator for the general fund savings, and we'll also be filling it with this budget so that anyone who is interested in learning how or what our actual revenues look like within a calculator in a simplified conversation can view that, and we'll get that live this week. We are not recommending any rate increases and assessment increases. Reason being the same since we had the conversation back in January, I believe, around the book of fees, and that we really need a really good set of time to analyze our rates and assessments and what actually triggers increases. This is a balanced budget, and it begins the implementation of fiscal stability measures necessary really to achieve fiscal stability in the next 5 years. As I've shared, fiscal stability is not just whether or not you have money, it's also the staff that's made available on a consistent basis, policies that you adopt, and then operations and procedures in place. So those 3 areas are the areas that are most in need at the city, and this begins implementation of efforts to implement fiscal stability. That's a quick PowerPoint presentation. We have had so many conversations around the budget. There's been on our submittal, the only difference between the last drafted preliminary budget and this preliminary budget I had shared via an email that itemized those benefits and personnel account adjustments as well as narrative changes. So narrative changes will likely continue. We're still capturing edits as we're going through, so we'll continue to revise those until we get to that last date. But mostly it's aligning what dollars change to the narrative sections and trying to really mirror within the line items what is in the narrative. With that, I'll ask if you have any questions of me.
Thank you, Manager Hollishock. Questions from the commission?
Mayor, I have maybe one question. Thank you for the presentation, City Manager. And I know that Danae stopped sharing screen, but I did have one question about the table, about sort of what was remaining. On the right, it had sort of a highlighted row for each of the funds. So for the general fund, I see the reference to the $1.9 million transfer from the general fund to the capital improvement fund reflected in the capital improvement, which I believe is actually, that's not the transfer, that's the expenditure, I guess, of those dollars. I'm wondering if the general fund line reflects all of the proposed transfers from the general fund to other funds.
Yes, it does cover all the transfers.
So those would be included in, is it in the budgeted, where would that transfer show up on that in the general fund line?
We have not put the total spending on this chart. Total transfers, excuse me, on this chart.
Okay. Okay. So I'm wondering, and maybe I just need to spend some time with this new table. So maybe if it's possible to get this, that would be helpful. But just trying to kind of get a sense of what total one-time and total recurring encompasses. Again, at some point down the line, that might be helpful, because I'm not sure. I understand the concept of this. I'm not sure if I'm like going line by line, if I'm tracking it all. Gotcha. So, okay. And then Mayor, I had one other question that actually relates to another item a little later down in our agenda related to amending the FY21 budget. So this reflects some additional expenditures, both for golf and then for health insurance primarily. My understanding from communications, I think from the city manager, was that amount this is a plan to use 760,000 of the remaining 1.4 million in COVID for these. No, and Director Danielson is shaking her head. Okay, correct. I'll have to go back and read that email. I guess I was under the impression that we had 1.4 million remaining, and we have these additional expenditures that you were proposing to use those COVID funds for.
Thank you, Commissioner. No, I confused the issue. I submitted that suggestion as an opportunity. The reason this item is coming tonight is to increase the spending authority within the budget. The total revenue received by the city to date is sufficient enough to cover this. My suggestion was around not needing to do it because we already had spending authority within the 1.4 million. So there is no need to change this item up because we have the revenue. We're just asking for the spending authority. So if you think of the $10 million ending balance that we projected, it's within that $10 million ending balance.
Okay, thank you. And I'll save my questions for that that agenda item maybe for later. But I just wanted, just in relation to the 1.4 million, wasn't sure how it connected. But okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, a question. Could you pull that slide back up? Thanks. And it's helpful to see that chart, so thanks for putting that together. My questions for the 440 of the General Capital Fund. My understanding in the yellow line, it says commission discretion balance one time available, and in the 440 General Capital list, it's about 1.18 million available there. And I noticed we have a total recurring. There's a whole backstory to that one that I'll try to avoid going into tonight. But that 1.182, when I look at our preliminary budget, that is the total remaining balance of the 440 fund. Am I right? And I'm seeing Director Danielson nodding at me.
Yes, correct. Correct, Commissioner Halliday. Yes, you'll also notice that the reserve policy doesn't exist yet for the general capital. We'll be starting that conversation next year. The general capital outlay, overall capital in its method has not been adopted in a repeatable way. So we don't have a reserve policy yet because we haven't clarified how that different type of activity within general capital is actually being projected. But yes, that's available.
No, I mean, and I appreciate that. I guess my question with it, maybe it's going to take me a while to get there. So when we used to get the budget, whether it was under Manager Alice or Manager Taylor sort of saw through one, but predominantly Manager Alice, there was a section of the budget called the CCIP. Now, I'm not saying the CCIP was the pinnacle of accuracy and my favorite document to try to work through, but if nothing else, it provided a extremely dry recitation of everything, right? From police cruisers down to hand dryers at the Civic Center, pay as you go with a 10-year lookout pretty much. And it let us look at any given year as a snapshot and say, we have a schedule that $2 million is going to need to be spent on specific capital in 2025. Now, are we going to squeeze another year out of that open lands truck? Heck yeah, if we need to. And so some years we did not need to budget that additional $50,000 capital expenditure. And so it was always kind of, we fudged around the edges sometimes. Sometimes we had to outlay more because something came up, like Kendrick Legion Field, brand new thing that was never on the capital schedule. Flash forward, the year that Manager Cortez put together her budget, Mr. Cooey provided to us a more truncated version of that because Manager Cortez agreed that the CCIP was sort of unwieldy and not her favorite thing either. And you're continuing that tradition. But what we always had unifying all of those was some sort of lookout into the future for the capital fund. Even if it was 1 or 2 years that said, hey, next year we're going to need 3 new police cars. And the year after that, we're going to need a new truck for this. And we're going to have to build that. And when I see a number like 1.182 on the general capital, to me, that money is sitting in that fund because we know we have capital obligations in fiscal 23. And we know we have obligations in fiscal 24. Now, can I tell you with my crystal ball exactly which one it is? No, but I know that a truck is going to come due. I know we're going to have to buy a new hand dryer. I know we're going to have to, change out someone's desk, and they're going to be there. And I want to be clear, my understanding that we cannot run that fund to zero, as fun as that might be with capital projects. Am I right?
Commissioner Halliday, the question you're asking, is that the reserve, basically? Is that the reserve amount we should be setting?
Well, no, not a reserve amount so much as it says here, commission discretion 1.182. Well, that's enough to buy a Henderson Street bridge, right? So my take on the 440 fund was always that I could open up the CCIP and say, yeah, I can't buy a Henderson Street bridge as a commissioner's wish list project because next year there's 1.182 million in expected capital expenditures. So do we have anything, understanding that I know we want to change the CCIP, that says we at least have these planned expenditures in fiscal 23 or fiscal 24, or fiscal 25. Can't say that any one of them is going to expressly happen on 1 year, but to know how much of that 1.182 is sort of already spoken for over the next 3 years.
Great question. I do not have an answer for that. What I have been looking at with with Director Danielson, just promoting her all over the place twice tonight. Sorry about that. So with Director Danielson is to look at the vehicles. The vehicles are the largest charges that we would have. Please come on, Director Danielson.
We'll just promote you right now. So
sorry about that.
Raise your right hand.
I swear.
But the anticipation is that those larger one-time are the vehicles, and those vehicles are the tandem trucks and the fire trucks. So we're already under a loan that we're working on with the intercap. We also haven't changed the assessments or the anything related to what could backfill that capital outlay as well. But as I understand it, this was the best we could do for the time being, but I'll turn that over to.
Well, and maybe
Director
just for Ms. Danielson, have you looked at the sort of FY, probably 18 would have been the last one that had the last CCIP. It still would have been just a smidgen into 21, 22, 23 and see what exists on there that we ought to be looking for next year about this 1.18 that's sitting in there.
Yes, I have reviewed it. Our budget analyst, Christopher Cooey, also sat down with all of the department heads and walked through their capital over the next few years that is currently held on that list. I have questions about the integrity of that document. So although it does exist, it was a tool for finance to walk through all of the equipment and vehicle needs and some maintenance and repair items that are not only needed in the next fiscal year, but over the next 10 years are on that list. So you're right, the 1.1 million that's left in that fund, should you choose to delegate that to capital funding that has not been already outlined in the budget, that would deplete the cash reserves in that fund, and there would be nothing left for equipment in the future, unless there was some other funding mechanism. Although in fiscal 22, the general fund is transferring almost $2 million to that particular fund in order to pay for ongoing repair and maintenance, vehicle replacements, things that are normally not specifically on a capital schedule, but more ongoing maintenance and operation costs.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to just ask the question of, do we have any way of knowing how much of that 1.18 is being asked for, right, by the respective departments as it's allocated in there over the next 3 years? Is that 1.18 sufficient? Insufficient? I mean, it's never, in my experience, it's never been sufficient, right? We've always been playing a losing game in the 440 fund. That's why traditionally we've always appropriated somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000 as a sort of recurring general fund transfer every year. That was always a losing proposition because on any given year, the 440 fund, at least on paper, demanded $750,000 to $2 million in scheduled replacements. Granted, they weren't always actually executed on. So I agree with you that we don't want a CCIP that doesn't actually tell us those kind of things, but it was a good way of us knowing that there were things on the horizon and we could look forward and see them. And that's just why I'm trying to gauge here. We're spending a lot of money. We put a lot into it this year and we're spending a lot of it. And I can't get a clear picture of whether 1.18 is safe, unsafe, very unsafe. And I'm going to go with unsafe and very unsafe because rarely has the 440 ever been safe. I would tell you the whole time I've heard. So Commissioner Logan wrote us a long op-ed about how unhealthy we were being with the 440 fund back when he was running. And I'm just saying as a commissioner today, I can't gauge the health of the 440 fund. And it would be great if we start hearing some of those things from you guys, even if it's just telling us what's wrong with it or what those expected expenditures are, because it scares me to hear that it's not healthy and that, we don't have a plan necessarily right now to sort of keep it healthy. And the only way to do that is general fund transfers for the most part, at least on the general fund items.
Thank you, Commissioner Halliday. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I think that the way that particular fund has operated is not something that, in my experience, is a fiscally sound way of managing ongoing fleet and equipment costs. They're being managed like a capital fund. In my experience, that we've operated equipment rental and replacement type funds where each particular vehicle is listed out or equipment is listed out, and the lifespan of the vehicle is outlined, and then there's a funding mechanism to charge users of those particular vehicles each year so that when the time comes to replace the vehicle, that's replaced. It comes on a schedule. And I think that that's what this particular fund is trying to do. However, the way that it's been funded has led to the current situation where we have so much deferred maintenance and deferred requests for things like field replacement, court replacement, resurfacing. Funding it at $300,000 a year has led to the situation where we're at now, where now you have an overabundance of items that have been deferred over the years for requests for fiscal 22. Part of that resiliency work that we're doing is to identify funding mechanisms and procedures and policies in place in order to solve the ongoing maintenance and operation and replacement of vehicles and equipment, and whether it comes, I don't believe the mechanism that we're using now is that solve. I am looking at analyzing with our finance team to propose a new method. Now, that's not going to solve the cash balance in 1 year. It won't. I can clearly tell you right now that that fund does not have enough money in it to fund the ongoing replacement of vehicles over the next 5 to 10 years. What I'm wanting to do is work with finance team and the city manager is to come up with a methodology so that we can get to a fiscally stable way of funding our equipment replacements. The capital program, I agree. It's normal to present a long-term capital plan in a budget document. We just don't have that for this fiscal year because there's no real mechanism to do that at this point. But it's also been my experience to propose a long-term capital project plan that goes 5 to 10 years and also identifies funding sources so that the commission can have that at their disposal to look at and analyze for future needs.
If I may as well. Sorry, I just wanted to add one more item around some of the larger picture conversation we've been having also includes debt and the relationship of debt within the general fund. Our debt went out. We really dropped down our debt this last year as well within the general capital outlay. So we've been really strong in trying to think creatively. So it's not just around replacement, but also the type of debt we're taking on. Vehicles themselves are not, should have their own replacement schedule that includes not only wear and tear of the vehicle, but also its age and then its use. Cold storage, I know is one of those conversations that has come up. Those storage of vehicles that are extremely expensive, large tandem trucks are $250,000. Those are really hard to replace if you don't budget for them and kind of set them aside in the envelope for the tandem truck. By doing that over time, you're actually more stable than the one-time purchase. So that's what I would like to see is more of a dedicated look at how much on an annual basis we need to be setting aside to be proactive against these replacements. So vehicles on their own, larger pieces of equipment like the 911 systems or any of the integrated electronic or technical IT systems. Those are really much more difficult to budget for in capital as compared to infrastructure improvements or these vehicles. So to get to the point, we feel pretty strongly that we are addressing the deferred maintenance and the capital outlay that's really happened over the last 3 years because it hasn't been addressed. So if you were going to choose your adventure and try and set aside a particular volume or a particular amount, if you wanted to be concerned with debt buy down, we don't have, we really bought it down. We're in a really good place to be conservative. So you could set a percentage as a group and decide, yeah, we want to go ahead and spend half of this and leave half. Those are all things that we will be having longer term conversations around. But right now, I'm not seeing as many large outside asks, but we also haven't. The only biggest deferred items are, the water and sewer, and those are in a totally different structure. So just to put that out there, we've been overthinking deferred maintenance more than one-time purchase because one-time purchases have been really very effective this year in buying down that debt as well.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving along. Oh.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll just say, Mr. Mayor, that number worries me. I don't know that there's anything we can do today. That'll be something for y'all in the future. Good luck. But it's a concerning number just in, again, if you just follow the commission's past, I'll say broken practice of $450,000 a year, right? That doesn't get you back to solvent in that fund in the long term based on the schedule that we have in place. I mean, heck, we've got the rebuild of the transfer station is in the fund. I think it's priced out at like $45 to $70 million or something in the long term. Never going to get there, even if you saved $450,000 a year. Don't know that you're actually going to replace the whole transfer station, but it's something the commission has to be cognizant of, that this fund's a problem, and it should have a recurring dollar amount attached to it. It probably should be higher. And if you don't think about it as a recurring fund, and you don't think about it as year over year new money, then you're not going to look at your budget in the right format, because you're going to think of it as one-time money. And as a result, you're not going to be thinking about it as a recurring dollar amount. It should be shifted into that column of year over year dollars to just try to tread water. And so if we don't do that starting today and next year, you're going to keep slipping behind even worse. So thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any public comments? Do you have any raised hands?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have received no written public comment, and I have no raised hands at this time.
Okay. We're taking a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will move to accept the city manager's budget submittal as the primary or preliminary budget, beginning the process of public hearing, which will take place on June 28th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Communications from Helena Citizens Council. Do we have a representative on?
We do, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I have Nancy Perry.
You have the floor, Ms. Perry.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Give me just a moment. Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you very much. Okay. I had a great long description of our report that I was going to talk to you about, but it's 25 minutes after 8 and you guys must be exhausted. So I'm going to make this very speedy for you. For starters, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for giving HCC this opportunity to talk about our review and recommendations of the budget. I hope you all received a copy of your report and have had time to read it over. And I was going to do a quick summary, but I think I won't do that quick summary. I'll just tell you that it was written in 3 sections, and section 1 is just a summary of the report. And it also describes HCC's responsibility for reviewing and commenting on the budget. And section 2 was a list of 10 topics that the HCC hoped the city was keeping in mind when they were writing the new budget. Section 3 was a discussion of 20 different funds that we selected to include in our report. And those funds were grouped in that I looked at them afterwards and I thought, well, there are really 4 logical groups of funds in this. The first one is different funds that in our report, we're recommending that the city continue to do exactly what you're already doing. So we thought this is excellent. An example of that were the loan programs. There were 4 of them where you're loaning funds to residents for water service lines and sewer service lines and sidewalk replacement, and finally the solar panel installation. And we thought that those loan funds were an excellent idea, and those brought on a great deal of discussion at our HCC meetings. So that was the first group. There's only one fund in the second group, and that was the one where we're asking for a small budget increase for HCC in order to give our administrator a COLA increase, and also an increase in what we're budgeted for neighborhood outreach to the residents of our districts. And the third group, we were asking the city to take your time, or asking the commission to take your time making one decision that you've been asked to make, so that you can make absolutely sure that you really understand the situation before you commit yourself. And the one I'm specifically referring to do is what to do about handing control of the Civic Center over to a nonprofit entity. And this brought on a great deal of discussion at HCC meetings, so I thought I needed to bring that up. And the final group is we are asking the city to find additional funds needed to pay for essential infrastructure programs and essential services and utilities that the city is going to need to provide in anticipation of future population growth. And we had a long discussion about that. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Much appreciated. Any public comments? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no written public comment and I have no hands raised.
Thank you. Regular items. A, consider a resolution expanding the boundaries of the Street Maintenance and Improvement District for fiscal year 2022. Manager Halshaw?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Our budget coordinator, Christopher Cooey, has stepped forward. Should you have any direct questions for him, but this is an additional process that we go through in ensuring that we are adopting for the next fiscal year the appropriate boundaries for the assessments that will be aligned within the City of Helena. So the first item A is street maintenance and improvements, and that's District 1, and it expands the boundaries based on the current analysis of properties. And you'll see that is the same for item B. And excuse me, item, I think that is the last of it, isn't it? Item A and B. Thank you.
Comments or questions from Mr. Cooey?
Mayor, I have maybe one question. I don't know if it's for the city attorney or city manager, but given that we tabled setting the hearing for the street maintenance, would it make sense to also hold off on doing the boundary, or does it not matter the order?
Mayor Collins, Commissioner O'Loughlin, it doesn't really matter. I think it probably makes sense to pair them up together. Either way, we're going to be, in fact, this would give the city another month or two in case any properties were annexed to be included in those boundaries and not skipped over until next year.
Thank you, Attorney Jordan. Any comments or questions? Okay, any public comments? Entertain a motion?
Well, Mayor, I'm sorry, I lost the page on me here. I'll move to table the resolution expanding the boundaries of the Street Maintenance and Improvement District Number 1 for fiscal year 2022 and place it on a future agenda item following the public hearing on June 28th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Consider a resolution expanding the boundaries of Open Space Maintenance District 1 for fiscal year 2022. Manager Halshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, the same applies to this. This is an additional resolution expanding the boundaries. We did go ahead and adopt on consent the open space fee for the next fiscal year, and this open space maintenance district is just to set the newest revision to the boundaries.
Thank you. Entertain the motion. Or is there any public comment?
I have no hands raised and no written public comment, Mr. Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve a resolution expanding the boundaries of the Open Space Maintenance District Number 1 for fiscal year 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Consider a resolution of intention to amend the revised final budget authority and appropriation for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020, and ending June 30th, 2021 for the City of Helena, Montana, by amending resolution number 20609 to increase appropriations by $760,000 and set a public hearing date for June 28, 2021. Madam Mayor Halushaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is the line item that, agenda item that Commissioner O'Loughlin was discussing earlier around the spending authority and this request to increase our spending authority. Again, we have the revenues that we have received sufficiently available to us to increase the budget lines by this amount. This is just to increase the appropriation within the initial budget adoption so that the staff may receive the spending authority.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, maybe just a quick question, if that's okay.
Please go ahead, Commissioner.
So to the city manager, so how does this then play out with the preliminary budget that we are working off of for June 28th?
Thank you, Commissioner O'Loughlin. Yes, it would impact that by $760,000, but the intention, though, would not be that it's the reduction. I would love to ask, though, Commissioner, if I could bring Director Danielson forward to help answer that question.
You have the floor, Director Danielson.
Thank you, Manager Holowchuk and Commissioner O'Loughlin. These changes have already been incorporated into the projected column for the fiscal 22 budget, so no further impact to the funds would be necessary.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then one other question, Mayor, while Director Danielson is up here. So when we had a conversation about golf, there, you know, I had a question about the transfer, the general fund transfer that is reflected in FY21 in this current fiscal year. I think it was 200,000. I think we were told that that hasn't happened and that would come to the commission for approval. Is that still the case for the FY21 transfer?
Yes, actually, I might defer to City Attorney Joden on that, but our thoughts were that with the approval of the fiscal 22 budget, with that transfer in the projected column, that would also signify your approval of that transfer. But let me defer to
Mayor Collins, Commissioner O'Loughlin, I concur.
Thank you.
So maybe just a follow-up question. So are we then, I mean, I don't recall having a circumstance where we're amending the current fiscal year that we're in as a commission, right? So, but that, I mean, that if there was ultimately further conversation about where kind of golf sits generally, we would have that conversation and could amend that. So it's a proposed transfer. It's just in the previous fiscal year.
That is correct.
Yeah, and this is, if I may, also this is the loan payment. So part of it is that we don't have the accounting established for that loan debt.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think it's more than that loan debt, but yeah, okay.
Any other comments from the commission? Any public comments?
I have no public comment, Mr. Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I would move to approve a resolution of intention to amend the revised final budgets, budget authorities, and appropriations for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020, and ending June 30th, 2021 for the City of Helena, Montana by amending resolution number 20609 to increase appropriations by $760,000 and set a public hearing for June 28th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Consider a resolution authorizing participation in the Board of Investments of the State of Montana Annual Adjustable Rate Tender Option Municipal Finance Consolidated Intercap Revolving Program, approving the form and terms of the loan agreement and authorizing the execution of the delivery of documents related thereto. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioner. This is the intercap loan that had been budgeted for this year. Its final execution. And I know that both the fire department and Director Danielson are very excited to get this moving. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commission? Public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would move to approve a resolution authorizing participation in the Board of Investments of the State of Montana Annual Adjustable Rate Tender Option Municipal Finance Consolidation Act Bonds Intercap Revolving Program, approving the form and terms of the loan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
E, consider a resolution vacating the full width of the alley adjacent to lot 11, 12, and 13 in Block 36 of the Flower Garden addition to the City of Helena, Montana. Manager Hollishock?
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. The city's engineering team was contacted by Chris Rise, who was surveying on behalf of his client, the owner of Big Sky Auto Glass. The issue is that two existing sewer mains under his property were not recorded in an easement. The application is requesting a vacation of that adjacent undeveloped alley on the north side of the subject property in exchange for a utility easement to the city. So the legal description of the property is listed in the present situation, and the Director Leland, long day. Director Leland is here if you have any further questions.
Any questions for Director Leland from the commission? Any public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve the resolution vacating the full width of the alley adjacent to lots 11, 12, 13 in Block 36 of the Flower Garden addition to the City of Helena, Montana.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday.
Aye.
Commissioner Dean.
Aye.
Commissioner Logan.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin.
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Consider city project number 18 through 15, West Side Water and Sewer Project Phase 2 Addictive Alternative Change Order. Manager Hollishock.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This item relates to the West Side Water and Sewer Project, and it's a Phase 2 additive. In particular, we're asking for authority to add in the total amount necessary to complete this addition. The alternative is being added as a result of conversations with a school district who have given us permission to go under their new parking lot. And as a result, we have to install a large lift station. That lift station will be across from the school. We are in continued conversations with the school district to receive approval to move forward. The unfortunate item is that they have asked if they would give us permission to do so if we would agree to let them expand onto their football field. We are not in agreement with that idea because it is a storm sewer and potential increased water table, and are concerned with that location for such a structure. So at this point, we would just want to make sure to at least offer the funds set aside should we have to install a lift station in order to keep from impacting the school district's parking lot.
Thank you. Comments from the commission? Any public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr.
Mayor, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve city project number 18-15 West Side Water and Sewer Project Phase 2 Change Order number 7.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. The last two items on the agenda tonight. Oops, sorry.
You want to take over? I'll give it to you. Okay, G, consider a resolution suspending the prohibition of consumption of alcoholic beverages and possession of open container of intoxicating beverage on city property. Okay. Discussion from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I think, can we have the city manager
Oh, yeah.
report on it?
We're feeling tired, I know.
I apologize, Madam Manager Hollishaw. Go ahead, Manager Hollishaw.
Thank you, Mayor. These next two items, but item G and H, do relate to a conversation that was held in the most recent administrative meeting, and they're directed to bring back a method that would allow for the waiving of consumption, and in particular at the Pride events. And one of the expectations that is within most city managers is that I bring before you the larger policy issue when in fact it may be a narrow slice. So we have had 4 different areas of concern around consumption and open containers within the city. So this particular item is directed at being clear on what is the policy decision overall that the commission has with regard to open container. And is it only for specific events? Is it only in specific areas of downtown? And I ask these questions of you because we have, we're coming out of this transition from COVID restrictions to a larger conversation and living with COVID. And we've had conversations with the Walking Mall wanting to continue the open container and having outdoor consumption as well. We've had a number of other events turn in their permits and insurance. This came up as a relationship to the permit process that's currently in code. In order for an event to receive an open container permit, if they're going to, within their event, they have to have insurance. There are several events that have already completed that. This one in particular has not. It's understood that in the past, this has been waived of the event. I'm not sure how that had happened. I actually believe what had happened ultimately was the previous event received insurance coverage by one of the bars that allowed them to consume outside, so they didn't have to purchase the event coverage. The event this year is 3 times the size and it covers multiple blocks, and it's more difficult for those businesses to make that insurance coverage happen. Now, the events can purchase insurance. In this event in particular that was brought up, we would have to waive it just for that event. And instead of waiving insurance, which we technically don't have authority to do unless I were just to say, don't enforce consumption on that day, we would what would happen is that we would not be issuing the ongoing open consumption and permits that open consumption that happens in our parks as well. So the intention here is to be more clear. What is it that is the policy issue that the commission is sharing to the team that needs to be moved in within the code? We have oftentimes, looking back over the open container citations, seen that they're actually people who are homeless and those who cannot actually pay for those tickets. So is it really about the consumption outside, or is it about leveling out what is currently a system that really doesn't ultimately result in DUI? It doesn't remove, having open containment doesn't stop someone from drinking too much, and it certainly doesn't stop them from being in public drunk. But there are 2 other laws that cover that, and they're DUI and public drunkenness. The same for concerns around entering locations they should not have consumption. Each location has, each business has particular licensing assigned to them. this really is an intention to understand where is it that you want us to go? Is it just this one event? Does it apply to all 9 other events that have turned in the permit and the insurance? Is this really a conversation around that we need to be working more towards citywide and setting best practice and looking at other communities? So the question is it one day? Is it just in downtown? Is it in downtown in the 6th Ward? Is it just this one event? And if it's just this one event, what do I do with the other 9 that have completed? So
Thank you, Manager Halshaw. The last time we had this issue, I'll make sure everything's clear. What was decided that day?
the last time, thank you, Mayor, this event in particular received insurance coverage from the.
No, I mean, the last time we discussed this as a commission.
What was the direction of staff?
From the commission to the
Yes,
staff.
it was, thank you, Mayor. The consensus was for the team to come back with a resolution that would allow for events. Now, what we learned is that we don't have that latitude to do only events. We have to look at it in the big picture, but you can certainly narrowly wedge it if you just make that motion tonight.
Unless there's a change from the commission, I think we should move forward. Go ahead, Manager.
Yeah. It's a long night. Mayor, maybe just a question for the city attorney, just if I'm looking at option, and my understanding is we have 2 sort of options in front of us. If we were to look at option 2 related to the downtown urban renewal district, I'm wondering if it's possible to revise this language. So on page 2, the highlighted sentence at the end where it says November 18th, 2019 respectively, add then for events taking place on July 16th and July 17, 2021, and then strike section 3 of that. I'm wondering if that would sort of get perhaps to what I think maybe the commission discussed at the last administrative meeting, but wanted to get your take on that potential language.
Thank you, Commissioner. Manager Halshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll also defer to the city attorney on the specific legal points asked here, but it does broaden it to the entire city.
You have the floor.
So that's the urban renewal district one. I'm not striking that language.
So Mayor Collins, Commissioner Lachlan, my understanding is we would put it on option 2, which is the downtown urban renewal district, a specific date of June 16th and 17th.
July
16th and 17th. It is possible. I will, I guess, express my concerns with only permitting a specific event. I think one, as Manager Harlow-Schalk alluded to, we probably may have an equal protection issue in that those individuals who are consuming intoxicating alcoholic beverages or possessing them in downtown or near downtown, I should say not within the urban renewal district, but right outside, would be subject to the ordinance. And I think there's a question there of equal protection. And then secondly, my concern is that we would essentially be giving a permit for this one event without compliance with the city code requirement that they provide liability insurance. That's just my concerns and that's kind of why we drafted option 1 and 2 that are broadly non-specific to a specific event. We were trying to fit it more as a legislative action, which is immune from action for damages, rather than this potentially being construed as a permission to one event.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'm curious about, and I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about this, but I have no problem expanding this to, these events in general, not just this one specific event.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'm uncomfortable with either of these options for a couple of reasons. One, the suspension of ordinance. And Secondly, the short notice that we're considering this action, I'm also uncomfortable with. I think there's a pretty decent chance that we're bringing something that affects the public and the public's safety and the public's safety forward without them really largely being aware of it. I mean, we received these proposals on Thursday afternoon, and so for those two reasons, the suspension of code. I mean, there's any number of parts of the code that I would really be, well, all of it, just sort of deciding on very short notice to go ahead and suspend those. So I'm uncomfortable with either option for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Sure. For the city attorney, so there's a lot of jurisdictions in this country that have some form of open air drinking district, right? People think of, obviously, New Orleans has areas of the city, here in Montana, Butte's got, I think they scaled it back 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. You gotta put that beer away. There's all sorts of towns across the country that have actually gone towards this concept. And I'm curious because we keep throwing around sort of this concept of liability on the part of the city for something that the city is just saying, if you choose to walk out of this bar with a plastic cup, we're not going to charge you with something. Nobody has to buy liability insurance for that because the city has just said, drink them if you got them there. So what is, I mean, give to me in the nutshell, the liability concern here, other than more drunk people might wind up being up to more mischief, but like, what is that actual liability concern?
If I may, Commissioner Halliday, and then I'll turn it over to Attorney Joden. The first, I have an obligation to bring to you concern when there is just one and there's 9 others. So that's the first. And then, so as far as liability, we don't have the plastic cup expectation. So the layers of good policy setting within those other jurisdictions have already happened. So I'm absolutely interested in working with you all to put together good policy for the entire city around and similar to those larger jurisdictions. And I'm concerned with doing them in one-offs that result in not really solving the bigger issue. So that's why I bring them in this way, and I can turn it over to Attorney Joden to address that second question around risk.
Yeah, because I'm not concerned. I mean, the liability question on the other 9, I mean, what a crisis of opportunity if we have 9 events that actually want to make use of our downtown, celebrate downtown Helena, and be otherwise fun and boisterous down here. If you were here for Pride last time, most people's comments was, oh geez, why don't we have this every single weekend in Helena? So if the problem for us is the crisis of having 9 more festivities that want to do that, like tally ho, bring them on. Let's have more fun opportunity and culture in downtown Helena. My question is more about really Commissioner O'Loughlin's extremely narrow suggestion of, this shrunken area for what's probably going to amount to about a 10-hour period of time over 2 days, 10 hours a day or something of the like. There has been this concept floated to us of the fears of liability to the city, I assume for someone tripping on a curb or something because they've just drank. And that's where I'm trying to get to is you're never going to convince me that there's some sort of equal protection with regard to somebody sitting on the externals of that district. I understand you've got to tell us that, but you'll never get me there. But I want to know about the person who allegedly trips and says, oh, this is the fault of the city for allowing open containers, because I don't see that one, but walk me to it.
Thank you. I'm going to step in first. Sorry, just to come back to this point of the homeless whom we're issuing citations to on a routine basis because they have open container in public parks. And on this day, we're going to enjoy jovial events and still be able to cite people who are homeless because they are outside of that urban renewal district. So that's where we get to the equal protection conversation and individuals being cited for things that are really.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate
Not
that. I'm
in a
telling you,
different way.
you're never going to convince me of that. Like, I appreciate it. I know you got to raise it. You gotta voice that objection. But again, I really want to hear the city attorney's risk assessment, because that's the only piece left to me that would carry any weight. I don't see it, but I'd love to hear it.
Sure, Mayor, Commissioner Halliday. So I'll work backwards. I am not concerned with liability to the city if the city, as a legislative policy decision, decides to allow open containers on its property, on streets. My concern is that right now, the regime that we have set up is city code requires a permit from the city, essentially an exception to its prohibition. And therefore, by granting the permit to do so, the argument would be if somebody is hurt, the city somewhat has liability and probably more importantly, defense costs. And so the code, which was adopted in 2019, essentially a long-standing prohibition and moved it. But we've had this prohibition in place for a long time. The risk being if somebody does challenge the city and MMIA would be on the hook for its own defense. And that's where we transfer the risk to the event holder is they agree to indemnify the city and they provide insurance to cover those indemnification obligations. So that's why, again, I go back to if we're permitting this, a specific event, when our code requires that they get a permit and they provide insurance, my concern is that we're giving them special treatment. We're not complying with our ordinance. And a clever defense attorney would argue that the city is somehow not only responsible for that, which I think at the end of the day, we have a strong argument that, look, all we did was permit it, right? We didn't control the event. We didn't mandate that they provide excessive alcohol or I mean, if it's exclusively related to alcohol, probably at the end of the day, the city's not going to be found liable. So it's mostly the concerns about defending the costs of the claim.
So is there a distinction between event insurance and event insurance with alcohol? Because I didn't know that, like, are that plaintiff class, right? The person who got injured and says, you guys allowed this event. Well, if they have event insurance, they've got event insurance. Are they excluded if the person who trips happens to have drank a beer before they left their house that day, or was seen coming out of the Rialto with it, or is drinking one right then and there? Or does the event insurance just cover that anyway if no one's actually selling alcohol on the city right-of-ways, which is where most of this insurance requirement came from, was somebody who's acting as the vendor at a city designated closed off area.
Right. So Mayor, Commissioner Halliday, we do not require insurance for special events. It's only the alcohol component permit that requires the insurance. Now, there are special events in the parks that we do have indemnification language and require them to provide insurance much in the same way we require of alcohol, but I wouldn't say it's a general matter, all special events. It's unique to parks. It's unique to the reservation of that park and the operations that they're running there.
So if we prohibited alcohol we never did anything. We just leave this in place. People are downtown, everyone's behaving themselves, and no one's drunk, no one's drinking anything. And someone slips and falls. We're not getting indemnification anyway, right, from the Pride group then?
That's correct. And that's because the city did not give permission for it. Just generally legislative policy, the city believes it's okay to consume alcohol on the streets, sidewalks, and parks. But it's when we have a prohibition and we grant an exception to that, the concern is that somehow the city is on the hook for that. And again, at the end of the day, I don't believe, short of some showing that the city meddled in the approval and created or was contributory to the situation that caused the damage, the city's not going to be on the hook for the ultimate damages. It's the cost of the defense in defending the suit in the first place that we're trying to transfer risk to the event holder.
No, I mean, I get where you're coming from. You're not going to convince me in terms of the balance of the values here. It kind of reminds me of the person who sued the Symphony Under the Stars because, they're walking around Carroll College, probably had a drink and tripped and hurt their foot. So, I mean, I appreciate the answers. It doesn't get me there. It goes back to, I think Commissioner Laughlin's right about the temporary limited piece, and then we can have that more robust discussion about what would be a best practices for the future.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any others?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Just a question, I guess. So is there a recommendation from staff on these other 9 events?
Thank you, Commissioner. They've already received the insurance, so they're already through the process. So they would not need the waiving. All of the other events that require alcohol consumption insurance have completed it.
And Mayor, I imagine those events are a little or different than this particular event, given that they're likely using one insurance vendor and are then able to get insurance. I mean, I think, or alcohol vendor and able to get insurance through that vendor. That would be my.
What are some of those events?
Public races. Thank you, Mayor, your question. Races, other outdoor events in the park, those types of events. Now, as far as the insurance is concerned, just because it's a larger event doesn't mean that they couldn't get the insurance. It's absolutely available to them. It's just a choice.
But the location is different, I think, compared to what we're talking about for this.
Well, most of them cover, the reason we require the open container is because of that transfer, as Attorney Joden has shared, to the city of that liability. So no matter the location, it's still required. No matter how big it is, it's still required.
And those are vending alcohol, right? Otherwise they wouldn't need the insurance, would they?
No. Whenever there's open consumption, they would need the insurance as part of the event.
Right, but all of these have a vendor. That's the reason they're doing it, right?
No, the vendor isn't extending the insurance. There are several events that have their own insurance for the event.
But the city attorney just said they don't have to have insurance for the event if they're not doing alcohol. And the reason they're doing alcohol is because all of these events either have a multi-source or a sole source vendor who is selling alcohol at that event. That tends to be the difference here with what we're seeing, right? If you just held an event at, Pioneer Park, closed off the fences and said, you can open drink, that's not what these events are doing. They're bringing in, someone who parks a truck there and sells beer, right?
It depends. It really does depend. And the ultimate, it doesn't really matter the type of distribution. If there's open container in the event, they have to have the insurance.
And we can just suspend that though. Yeah.
Any other comments? Public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commission, thank you for this opportunity to make comments. My comments are directed to the resolution portion of this, and I want to direct it toward the procedural, not the substantive or the policy. I believe that's going to be coming at a later time. For the record, my name is David Nielsen. I live at 1170 Mendocino Drive. As you know, I mean, you've been doing this for some time, commission action comes through one of 3 ways. One is a motion, oral motion, and then that is reflected in the minutes. Or if it's a written motion, then it is a resolution, and likewise, that is passed quite simply. And then the third way is the creation of an ordinance. And ordinances are much different and more important than a motion or resolution. And the reason is because an ordinance is establishing law. It's establishing law for the City of Helena. And after an ordinance is passed, through 2 readings with at least a 12-day separation period between the first and second reading. Then it's posted and notice is given to the public. And that's because it's a law and it's important. An ordinance then is codified in our code. And so we have the Helena City Code, and that's the source of our law. My concern was the notion of suspending a law through a resolution. With an ordinance, once an ordinance is passed, you have a code. If you're going to make changes in that code, you have to do it by ordinance form. You can't do it by one of the lesser methods. And the reason is because it is law. So if you want to repeal the law, you go through that same ordinance process. If you want to amend it, you go through that same ordinance process. And it's a lengthy process. I concede that. But that's what the statute of Montana requires, is that you have that longer process. I think that the danger is if you try to suspend, which is in effect a partial repeal of an ordinance through a simplified process, you run the risk of creating precedents that some commission at some point in time will point to that as that's the way you can do business. And we have the city has a lot of important codes provisions that you don't want to take lightly. For an example, the fire code, that's by ordinance. You can't suspend the fire code by a resolution and say, well, we're not going to have a fire code. You have an anti-discrimination or provision in the code. You don't want that to be subject to just a quick dismissal through a resolution. So I know that the policy decision will be heard. It'll go through the process. I think that's the next item, is starting that first reading of that ordinance to whatever the policy is you want to do. But I really think it's dangerous, and I don't think it's legally sound to try to amend the code by suspending it through a resolution. So I would strongly recommend and encourage you not to do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Do we have any other public comments? Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have Kev Ham.
Go ahead, Kev.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, thank you so much for staying so late on a beautiful night when I'm sure you'd rather be outside. I appreciate what you're going through with this, and I know that it's very taxing and confusing to go over all of the details that are involved in this. There are a couple of things that I just wanted to make clear. I really, really, really appreciate everything that you're doing as we're booking everything in place for what's going on in Pride. It is looking like it is going to be much bigger than what we had 2 years ago. So it is continuing our growth and making a much bigger impact on the city. And we just want to make sure that we have in the place the things that we need to make this successful. I do want to talk to 2 specific things, one of which is City Manager Charlotte Hawk keeps saying that there is a way for us to get insurance for this event for alcohol, and every single insurance company, including the ones that the city has directed me to, that I've talked to, and I explained to them that I am not the vendor, will not insure me, because they are saying that by the laws of Montana, the people that vend are liable. That means that Bert and Ernie's, Rialto, everyone else that is vending into this downtown area, which is all of the businesses that pay taxes year round, their insurance is required. Their insurance is there to cover their liability for serving alcohol. They are still under every other part of their insurance agreements and every other part of state law that says that they cannot vend to people that have been overserved, are visibly drunk, etc. All of those things are in place. So the problem that I've had is that the information that you keep getting is contradictory to the facts that I'm facing as I go out and talk to these people about what is going on. And I understand. And the other point that I want to talk to really quickly is that The other events that I know of that are coming on, and I don't know all 9, but I do know that we have like Ales for Trails and Meadowlark Music Festival that are going on, and those use alcohol sales as a funding mechanism for their events and for their future goals. And in doing so, they become a sole vendor of alcohol at those events. Therefore, they take the liability of it. We at Big Sky Pride do not do that. We want to bring an event to downtown that allows all the downtown businesses that are here year round to become the vendors, multiple, for it, so that they all make money in it. And I know that that's weird and different and odd, and I'm asking you guys to do a lot, and I really appreciate that you're taking all of your time on such a beautiful night to do it. So I know we'll get there. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kev. Any other public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I've received no written public comment and I have no other hands raised.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I'm sorry to hear he's been having such a struggle with regard to the insurance. I had been assured by the team that MMIA, one of the insurance carriers, actually offers it to the events that they did not have to have the vendor relationship in order to issue it. So if I may, I would love to, I'll just give another call to MMIA myself and see what's up with this insurance, why they can't give it to the to those events for coverage. It doesn't make sense since I'm getting counter info as well.
Thank you. Kev, a question. Have you contacted MMIA?
The information that I was given from David Konopke included MMIA sending me information for Payne West. I called the person at Payne West. They replied with, "We no longer do this insurance. I don't know why my name is still on that list." And they were the only person that I was given. When I reached out to other insurance agencies that I've worked with in the past on other events, they stated that because we are not an alcohol vendor, they cannot authorize insurance for alcohol because we are not selling it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. We were just talking about if in fact we have to have a different conversation around the organizations that are offering the alcohol, because it covers multiple, it covers multiple blocks and it covers multiple restaurants and bars that could be selling. If it's something as simple as taking the sheet of all the potential vendors to the insurance company and saying, can't we get coverage for all of these vendors on these days for this insurance? Then instead of trying to get each of the vendors, which was the opposite he had to try and do, by having each of the vendors spend out their own insurance over and cover all of the areas. I can look into that as well.
Okay, so man, I don't think I've ever been faced with this before. So if you're looking into that, what do we do?
Well, maybe I'll just make a comment. I mean, I think how this was brought to us is a little unfortunate. It is well beyond the conversation that we had. I thought there was some consensus amongst the commission that we wanted to, support this particular event. It is a unique event in our community, given just the scope and breadth of it over that 2-day period. So I don't know if it would make sense. So then, separately, I think we've been getting emails with concerns about a full-on repeal of this ordinance, which I don't think was the intent of this commission when we had this conversation at the administrative meeting. So my impression from that meeting was that there was a path forward in order to facilitate this event. I wonder if, you know, if we want to at least put forward a temporary suspension of the open container ordinance for purposes of those specific dates, to at least have it so that the public understands that the intent of the commission was not to full repeal, but to temporarily suspend the ordinance. But I mean, I'd be interested in what others think. But I think this sort of hanging out there right now it seems to go well beyond what we had talked about last administrative meeting. And, you know, Commissioner Dean, I also appreciate your comment. And I think I also thought that the intent of our conversation at the administrative meeting was to sort of figure out how we move forward with this event and also think about a process for other events moving forward. Because I also would support, you know, considering this for other events, not just this event. And so having that process moving forward, I think would be really helpful. We've got a short-term issue, I think, though, on the horizon.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I thought that too. And so even though we had the agenda and all of that, but this is blindsiding because we had already decided what we're going to be doing, and then to be discussing this, I believe I was blindsided.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I'm wondering if we, and I don't know what the city manager or city attorney think about this, but I'm wondering if we can have a plan A and a plan B. If they think that they can get clarity from MMIA and we can achieve event insurance, that be plan A, and plan B, it'd be what Commissioner O'Loughlin has put forward, and then really starting to have an actual discussion about what is this policy long-term and what do we want to achieve with it. I do, you know, I very much agree, similar with some of the public comment we got. I do think that, you know, this is something that is significant, but we do also want to facilitate, you know, events moving forward that do continue to bring more life and opportunity, you know, to different parts of the community. But I'm wondering if we can pursue a plan A and see if we can get this resolved without changing anything within code. And then plan B, we come back to I get what the Commissioner O'Loughlin had indicated.
Well, and Mayor, what I might suggest then is that we take a motion, we amend what we have in front of us, and then potentially table it, but table it and to come up at a specific date so that we don't lose this. And I mean, I know we're sort of working on a pretty short timeline. I mean, what the city staff put in front of us is a temporary suspension of this ordinance with no public hearing, you know, for the temporary suspension, right? There's a public hearing for the full repeal. So I think that if we wanted to just amend what we have in front of us and then set a date that it comes back to the commission, I would say June 21st. That gives a couple weeks for, you know, further conversations, but we've got it on the agenda. But we've got it on the agenda with, I think, what the commission was really driving for, right? Not a full repeal. So I don't know what the commission's thoughts are on that, but at least we would then have in front of us something that's a little bit more narrow in scope.
So I think that makes total sense, and it ensures that we're going to turn over those rocks and see if we can get done. And if it can't in those 2 weeks, then we've got a decision to make on the extremely narrowed decision.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious if the city manager or city attorney has thoughts on this proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Um, the, the most difficult part of bringing anything forward to all of you is the timing related to good policy setting, and this was just discussed. So for me in particular, the item was brought forward in a pretty difficult way, and in a way that I'm trying to flatten the conversation and make it more transparent as to what the big picture is. So if this was just the event, that's fine, but I didn't appreciate the method that was brought to me and the personal method it was attached to it. So my intention is to make sure that this is a larger picture, that we're not just making a one-off event happen. So I just, as far as handling it in this way, that's fine. You, as the commissioner, taking the risk on, and has been shared, that's your prerogative. And certainly we will implement it from there.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm certainly comfortable with following the code as it exists relative to events like this, and that's why we have the code. This is really, in my opinion, the first that we've really sort of noticed this up for kind of a public hearing. What happened, in my opinion, at the last administrative meeting was an unnoticed public hearing. I mean, this subject came up in public comment, and we had a discussion that almost sort of bordered on a public hearing, but it certainly didn't show up, that subject certainly didn't show up as an agenda item that any member of the public would have looked at and said, oh, they're going to be discussing some sort of change to the, public consumption of alcohol and open containers and that sort of thing. So with both of these motions that we're looking at in this particular agenda item, again, I'm uncomfortable with the sort of process that we're trying to accomplish in a temporary suspension of something that's codified, and I guess that's where I'm at. I'm certainly comfortable with following the code as it exists relative to these events.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'll just say, with regard to Commissioner Dean's question, we had a discussion at the last meeting, and no, it wasn't a public hearing. In fact, we're here talking tonight, right? We're having a public discussion on it. We've taken public comment. The suggestion is that we actually set it aside and have additional public comment on it. So the process objection always comes across when you subjectively disagree with it, but don't want to say it on substance. So we're done with that. Like, you oppose it and just say it. With regard to Commissioner Dean's question about, does Commissioner O'Loughlin's proposal make sense, or what does the manager and city attorney think of it? The way this is structured for us this evening was it was put on our agenda to do this tonight, which I think none of us are comfortable with. And what Commissioner O'Loughlin is suggesting is actually a two-step process for a much more narrow discussion. It's a better overall process than what we were told we could do tonight, that we had the authority to do tonight through public notice. So that there's no reason why that's a worse process than what was put in front of us this evening as a decision-making point, because we were told this was an appropriate choice. Although, looking down the table, none of the five of us seem to think that the two options that were put in front of us were remotely appropriate. So the question is, are we going to have the discussion to figure out how to solve this problem going forward? Are we going to calendar that up for a legitimate discussion, or are we going to push it aside? And more likely than not, let's be honest, we're going to let it die on the vine if we can't come to agreements, this whole insurance thing that isn't going to work, and we're going to kill this thing. So I agree with Commissioner O'Loughlin's suggestion that we put it back out there and we give ourselves a due date to get this thing decided, and then we'll have an up-down vote on it. And nobody can sit around and complain about public hearings. Nobody can complain about whether or not it's, done before the time. We're there. We're having it. It's on the agenda. Everyone can talk about it at that point.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I just have to take exception to Commissioner Halliday's remark that I subjectively oppose the event that this is surrounding. It's not that at all. It is process.
I didn't say the event. I'm talking about a suspension of alcohol, Commissioner.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Yes.
Mayor and Commissioners, at risk of convoluting this, I'm trying to distill this down, but it seems like, and I don't mean to speak for a majority of the commission, but it seems like the desire is ultimately to waive the insurance requirement, i.e. they still get a permit and the city, make sure that the closure of the streets is still good. And we run through the review of that as managers of the right of way. But it's really the insurance that is the rub with this particular event. I mean, for all we know, we don't even know if all the vendors want to participate. And that's the struggle with this event is one licensed establishment does not want to be responsible for another licensed establishment and what they do with theirs. So for example, Bert and Ernie's doesn't want to be responsible for the Rialto. And I think maybe that's where the difficulty lies. I still have obviously some hesitancy with that, but I've noted that with the commission. But ultimately it seems that's where the commission may be leaning is it's the insurance requirement that is the hang up, not necessarily the underlying prohibition to begin with.
Yeah, and Mayor, I will just say, and maybe I'll go back and listen to the admin meeting, but I think we were told that in order to sort of get past that insurance issue, we needed to suspend the ordinance. So if that's another solution, great. I think that's what we were told at the admin meeting, was that the suspension of the ordinance was what would get us there. So, I mean, we could still queue this up and table it, right? And then have the staff continue to work to find other mechanisms, if it's waiving insurance or what have you.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion at this point.
So Mayor, if there isn't an objection, I can go ahead and attempt to move to approve. Well, I guess what we really need to do is just move to amend this and then move to table.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a quick question? So back to the point that you just made, can this also include direction that if the staff find another solution that doesn't result in having to actually suspend the ordinance, that can be brought to the commission and pursued?
Yeah, I mean, I can say I think we would all be comfortable if there's another route that we just fully table it on June 21st if we don't need to move forward with it.
Sure. So attempt to make a motion.
Okay, so I'm going to move to amend the resolution suspending the prohibition of consumption of alcohol beverages and possession of open container of intoxicating beverages on city property within the downtown urban renewal district as follows. First, page 2, the end of that sentence, following respectively, add comma for events taking place on July 16 and July 17, 2021, and strike section 3.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk. Oh, any final discussion? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
No.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-1.
So Mayor, I will now, and I guess we kind of jumped because Oh, we just have, okay, we have
Yeah, we
two,
just have
two
this.
resolutions, but just as two options. Okay. So I'll move to table the resolution suspending the prohibition of consumption of alcoholic beverages and possession of open containers of intoxicating beverages on city property within the downtown urban renewal district as amended, and to be placed on the commission agenda for June 21st.
Second.
Any final discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
No.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public wishes to address the commission?
So Mayor, do we need to also move to table, or I suppose
So we did
hear
both.
the first passage on item H as well,
Okay.
and then
Go
table?
ahead. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. I will move to table the ordinance repealing or amending Chapter 14, consumption of alcoholic beverages on city property of Title 7, Public Ways and Property, and Chapter 1, Part 1, possession of intoxicating beverages, of Title 5, police regulations of the Helena City Code.
Second.
Any final discussion? It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Halliday,
Aye.
Commissioner Dean,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Loughlin,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. At this time, the commission will accept public comments on other topics. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have received no additional written comment and I have no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll give them another 10 seconds. Are there any final comments from the commission? Well, you're packing up like that. This meeting is formally adjourned. Dang. Oh, shoot.